It's a freeze out is happening right now. It's called the Little Ice Age. The Bennington Show is here to greet it head on. I'm Ron Bennington. There's Gail Bennington.
Yo.
And I'm Ron Bennington. And we are here on 10th Avenue. In a 10th Avenue freeze out. Quite frankly, if I'm going to be honest, it's a 6th Avenue freeze out. But we can see 10th Avenue from here.
Put on your booties because it's cold.
Well, it's cold out there every day. We are 6 weeks before we even find out if there's going to be 6 more weeks of winter. We could be looking at another possible 12 weeks of winter.
I was trying to remember last year when we had the really crazy snowstorm. We all stayed in the city.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, that was, I think, in March.
Yeah, that gets late.
So it's just like, for us to have a big snowstorm yesterday and then just freezing temperatures, I'm like, this is early in winter for this kind of behavior.
I love when they go, okay, you guys can have a hotel room here in the city because we want you to do the show. And then you're just like this at breakfast. I'll have the $32 croissant, please. Give me an $18 orange juice with that. And how much is each pat of butter? $4? Okay, bring me 6 pads. One of the pads I just want to throw on the floor and watch it melt. And just the way when you're on an expense account, you'll fucking pay for things the way you never would in your life.
Never in a million years.
Yes. No, I must fly first class.
But you know what? There's one person who doesn't do that, and it actually annoys me, and it's Vito. Like, we will be on a trip. We're going to, when we went to D.C. or when we go to Montreal. And I can't remember. We're all, like, getting food, and he would be like, I was thinking about the lobster roll, but it's pretty steep. And I'm like, yeah, everything's covered. And he's just like, doesn't mean I have a right to waste money. And I was like, yes, it does, Vito. Get the lobster roll.
You're
he's
a
like,
good employee,
I'll
Vito.
get the chicken sandwich.
Don't listen to these two.
I don't want to be wasteful. And you're putting that money down up front. So then, like, I'm going to need that $18. I'll go to the $10 place. And then, because it's too long. That is, the expense system here takes like 3 weeks to get your money back.
The next time we go somewhere, just fucking remind me and I'll give you some money.
So you can have the lobster roll you enjoy.
No, but it's all good now because now I got the credit card. I got a credit card just for the expense account, so we'll be rolling in it this time.
Yeah, but what if they don't pick up and go like this? Well, look at this. Look how panicky he is.
Every time I put an expense report, I turn to Chris and I'm like, this is it, man. This is the one that's not going to go through.
Now, you love Vito, right?
So much.
I love Vito. Chris?
A lukewarm, if that.
Okay. I love him. But today I almost punched him in his fat face. He told me somebody wasn't attractive because we were talking about a movie we both just saw. Say the actress.
Emma Stone.
What?
I'm not on the Emma Stone train like everybody else is. I think when I saw La La Land and I was supposed to believe that she was like this stunning, beautiful woman in La La Land, I didn't get it. I thought in Superbad, she was very attractive when I first saw that movie.
I want you to understand something. She's playing an actress that you don't think is attractive enough. She got the role because she's an attractive actress already.
I thought her roommates in that movie were more attractive than her.
You don't understand sexuality. Let me tell you, didn't watch this Billie Jean King movie?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
She plays it down, bad hair, glasses, everything. But she has a tremor, right? Mm-hmm. When she looks at another woman, and you get the inner life immediately, right?
She's tortured about it.
She's tortured, but it's kind of hot because you're seeing someone, like...
Understand.
Not being able to even hold back their own sexuality. And that's what makes a woman sexy. Not any kind of measurement like those bimbos that you love so much. But I'm talking about a woman who wears her sexuality on her sleeve, like a Deborah Winger.
Love.
Like a Holly Hunter. Mm-hmm. Or like a Kim Cattrall. I don't know. I ran out of names. I yelled at Kim Cattrall.
I think Emma Stone's an amazing actress. I like every movie she's in. I like every performance. I just don't get when people are like, man,
she's fucking hot, dude.
She's beautiful.
I don't
and she's got an ash that's fucking perfect.
But that's a new advancement from training for
all right, look, here's the thing about
you
her.
Go back years.
She's clearly a beautiful woman.
Not
there. I mean, like, even if you were
beautiful,
that's clearly a beautiful
the eyes are
woman.
shockingly beautiful.
Yeah,
I know her eyes are like like a cartoon character
Why
of a
are
sexy
we arguing
woman.
with this fucking guy?
He's like 2 of 10 would not bang.
All right, here's one. Here's one, and you're going to be shocked. Don Rickles. I don't find to be that attractive.
What?
We're doing a special at 2:00 today. Something Chris ran over Christmas, but we're playing it for you guys. And that's 2:00 today. Don Rickles, The Life in Comedy. Chris, is there anyone that everyone else finds attractive and you don't?
I find like Ariana Grande seems too childlike.
I appreciate that coming from you. I would have thought that would have been the two.
It's not a front.
Yeah, but I will say this, for being childlike, she's gorgeous. She's
a pretty girl.
But I saw her in real life, and just like that looks like a little kid.
She is very petite in general.
But
how old is she? She might be fucking 12 for all we know.
She's definitely.
She's like 19, 20, I think.
Yeah, so I mean that's not bizarre.
Yeah, she might just look her age, and you shouldn't be dating someone.
And by the way, when she's 70, she still might look great. She might look 37.
Exactly.
She was sitting right outside there one day.
Yeah.
And I was going to run into the booth to do something, and like a little girl waved at me, and I was like, hi. And then I went in, I was like, oh, that little girl was Ariana Grande.
Yeah.
I thought it was just like a 12-year-old sitting down waiting for her like friend to get out of there, but she was waiting for her boyfriend, Mac Miller.
What? Why do you have to drop his name like any of us can?
You don't know him.
You guys don't know the Mac?
No, we know that you don't think fucking pretty women are
I don't think
attractive.
Emma Stone's attractive, but I think this is crazy. You thought Jessica from Big Brother was attractive, and they look similar.
No, they don't.
Wait, let me see Jessica from Big Brother.
Jessica Graff, dude, come on.
Jessica Graff?
Let's put her up. Well, that's Ariana Grande.
Yeah.
Where's do Jessica from Big Brother?
But this is Jessica from Big Brother.
That's Ariana Grande right there.
No. She has giant breasts.
Yeah, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about face. Just look at the face.
So you're just going by breast
Oh,
size.
my
Makes
God.
you think
So
that makes a woman.
That's why he doesn't like Ariana Grande. Her tits are
Oh,
That's why he
unbelievable.
thinks
You know
she's
what?
12.
I actually was on your side. I was like, you know what? Yours is more of a reasonable answer than Vito's.
Thank you.
Now I've turned on you, Chris.
come on.
Because now
Let me
I know
tell
that you judge a woman's age by her breast size.
Chris's woman has giant, beautiful breasts, right? And so we were standing on the corner one day, and Chris goes like this, hey, scratch your back. It's time for you to scratch your back. I'm like, why is he doing it? And her breasts were just bouncing while she was scratching her back with both hands. And he was like this, get it, boss? I'm like, Chris, I don't want to be part of this.
I just thought everyone might say.
That's disgusting. That's disgusting that you would do that and put Ron in that position.
Yeah.
Forced to look at a woman's breast.
In this climate?
I know, it's freezing.
warm out.
It's fucking freezing. Which made her nipples uncomfortably hard. Say you, say me. Gail, what do you have?
All right. So this is one that I feel all the ladies across the board always talk
All the
about
single
this.
ladies?
And I just don't understand it. And that's Channing Tatum.
Agreed 100%.
I don't understand it. I don't get it.
See, now I
Not
think
only
you're
that,
crazy.
the dudes dig him.
Yeah, I don't.
Seth Rogen thinks that this is the most attractive man in the
I
world.
don't really understand it. And I'm not saying that he's just. I'm not saying like he's hideous
Remember
or
when
something.
Big J toured at my party showed us that his eyes were too close together?
Right.
Big J can look at anyone and find extreme
You know
flaws.
what? I think he really helped me because I believe he was mentioning that his face is in a tiny circle within his head. And now I'm looking at it. He's absolutely
He also
right.
said that about the other attractive guy.
Gosling.
Yeah, Gosling.
Oh, maybe that's who he said. Yeah.
Yeah, put it in
He
Gosling.
likes a nice spread out face.
Gosling-
Big
Yeah, he
J.
doesn't.
Gosling also has that thing where his eyes aren't even. Like, one's higher than the other.
Now,
A lot of times those flaws is what people like.
Now, Ryan Gosling is a person that I understand that he is attractive and women like him. I never got it until I saw him in person. And for some reason, when I saw him in person, I was like, oh, I get it. I see what they're gaga
He's got
for.
that thing.
Yeah,
They're
that
gaga
thing.
for Gosling. He's got that thing, that thing, that thing.
But Channing,
Gosling, you know you better
watch out.
The first time that I thought Ryan Gosling was really an attractive man is when he was going like this. City of lights, I keep looking at a city of lights. I'm walking down the street to city of lights. It's lit up for me and you. That's 'cause the city has lights. It's a lit city of lights.
He was the more attractive co-star in that movie.
You're a fucking...
Oh my God.
You know that we hate you now.
I mean, your answer is the worst.
I'll die on this hill.
Good. I'll be glad to see you die there.
Do you have one that you think most guys think someone is attractive, a female celebrity that you're like, I just don't understand it?
It would be easy for me to pick one of the Kardashians, but I don't want to do that.
Okay.
Now, the difference between is most people and me is I find most people to be pretty attractive. You know what I mean? Like, I am not like Vito where I have a hard line on people. I'm more likely to say somebody that most people don't find incredibly attractive. So give me some attractive people. Give me an attractive woman, Vito. Give me somebody who's very attractive to you. Your dream girl.
Jessica Biel.
Her. She's a beast.
No.
I consider her a fucking pig in the mud.
No, Jessica Biel's beautiful. That's what
Which one is Jessica Biel?
She, Justin Timberlake's wife.
Oh, no.
She was
I don't
in
like
Chuck
her at
and
all.
Larry.
Here's the problem with her. Can't act. And married to a douchebag.
Can act and married to, just like the song in general.
Let me see that one there. No, the picture of her ass, you fucking sissy. Oh, that's a great ass.
Yeah, she's known for her ass.
She
I
showed
didn't
it
realize
off.
that.
She showed it off in Chuck and Larry, and it really put her on the map.
You're one of the few people who saw Chuck and Larry, you fucking homophobe.
You're a huge Chuck and Larry fan.
Oh, that's the image of her in the...
Why don't you go see Chuck and Buck? Her ass doesn't look as good there as it did on the beach.
I know. You look
That
better
looks like
IRL.
flat right there. And look, her tan lines, it's like the rest of her skin is white and her ass is tan. That's fucking reverse tan line. That's sick. That's literally, look at it there. Look at the fucking brown. Because that's spray paint, dude. She fucking spray painted her own asshole.
They were contouring.
Did you say asshole?
Yeah. I was going to say bungholio.
Either is good, really.
I wanted to, but then Chris told me yesterday that wasn't as current as I thought.
Like, Ron, man, no one says that anymore.
I said I needed a TP from my bungholio. I don't know. It seemed like it was new.
No. It's old.
Okay. It all seems new to me, you know? All right, let's get into something else that we can talk about.
So we're on the topic of celebrity.
Oh, boy, are we.
So right now, there are all these types of, like, internet celebrities.
Yeah, that's my favorite kind.
YouTube celebrities, Twitter celebrities, or just famous as, like, Twitter comedians. What do you think will be the next type of celebrity that is just going to be so bizarre for us to understand? Because these are, like, this type of young people, YouTube celebrities are celebrities to them. Like, they're not, you know what I mean? Like, they would just, if they saw one of these people in public.
Weird, too, is a lot of times movie celebrities are more approachable than they've ever been in the history of the world.
Yes.
Like, there's not, I wouldn't even say there's movie stars because we've lowered the bar so much. I don't know anyone who can open a movie. I know there's characters that can open. Iron Man can open a movie, but I don't know if Robert Downey Jr. can open a movie.
Right.
You know, and that's why you see that he goes out of his way to play, again, a hit movie character. Iron Man or this. It's hard for me to figure out. I always think that the social media is done and then they come up with a new one.
Yeah, like some sort of newfangled. And then the people, like, get popular through that. I mean, even there are people who, like, kind of, I don't know if it's like vlog, but it's like they have popular Facebooks. Like, I know that sounds stupid, but it's like that's even weird to me. That you're just like, it's not even a YouTube celebrity. Like, they have a popular Facebook
Here's
page.
what I believe is going to happen. You're going to be on 24 hours a day. Okay? And people will be able to watch you and see what you're doing 24 hours a day. And that'll be the next kind of thing.
Like a regular man celebrity where you're like, it's like Truman Show where it's like, oh,
Yes.
I watch your feed all the time.
Right. You're going to be able to put up cameras in your home, in your car. They'll be so small, no one will notice them. You'll have you'll just always be on camera and people can follow you. Now just think, do you know any of our friends who you'd go, oh, I'd want to watch them 24 hours a day?
No.
I mean, if you just, like Mateo Lane might be
fun.
Might be fun to watch all the time.
I follow Ian Fidence's Instagram is pretty entertaining, but
Stavi baby.
Yeah, exactly.
So there are people that may become, you know what I mean, just in their regular life.
Right.
But think, if you could just follow around one person who works here and watch them, is there somebody that would keep your interest?
I'd follow Hoda around. I just to see. Right,
but she's a real star.
Yeah, that's
already.
the thing. Like,
I'm saying a regular person.
Because she would be like, you would see her interact with celebrities and politicians and famous people. So that of course would be, like, that's like a documentary. That would be interesting on the life of Hoda. But like, who's just like somebody who like works down the hall that you would be like
Dennis Falcone.
No, absolutely not. There's just no way that I can put up with that.
Disco Dan.
Nope.
Would drive me nuts.
No, I could not watch a Disco Dan.
I don't know. I'd like to see the bad decision making
in his apartment.
No,
Dan gets
I'd see the bad decision making the way he's dressed every day.
Well, do you remember Nina, who used to like help us out? She used to come in and
oh
do
yeah, the tan girl.
No, not
Okay.
tan girl.
Which one's Nina?
Nina is Muslim.
Oh yeah, love her.
So she and I followed each other on Instagram, and she has like much more of a like flashy, luxurious life. Like she always seems to be like out and at big parties, and like her makeup. It's almost like she's like a budding fashion kind of Instagram model. She has a lot of followers, and she's also like, you know how her makeup is always like insanely perfect. So I like started following her thing, and I was like, oh my god, she seems like a regular person I know that like could be like not long away from just being an Instagram celebrity because of her like makeup and fashion.
What about
sense.
Jen and her sister? They're both pretty, and they both go to really strange club things.
Right.
You know?
They'd
Like,
have to
I feel
bury
like-
the hatchet first, though.
Yeah, but maybe not. For the sake of the show. You know what I mean? We like a little...
They could be like Kardashians in a way.
Yeah.
Like more approachable Kardashians.
Well, they're Kardashians on a budget.
Right, exactly. Although they're trying not to be.
No,
Jen's
they'll
trying
put
not to be.
every dime they have into a fucking dress that they'll wear once.
I think the next type of celebrity is going to be like AI celebrity.
That's spooky.
That you're going to get AI that are broadcasters, hosts, you know, hosting TV shows or reality shows or competitions.
This is scary what you're saying, but it could happen.
Like Scott.
No, Scott's not AI. He's a real person.
Oh, okay. I thought
He's like a real human man.
What are you confused about, Tina?
He thinks Scott from HQ is not a human.
I was thinking like the experience of like going onto the thing.
But
like fucking Scott hasn't even been doing the show much. And every time he's not there, I turn it off.
I like that girl.
Well, I don't want that woman at all.
The British girl's she's just bad at it.
And then
So are all the guys.
Yeah.
She's no worse than the guys.
The guy with the gray hair.
Oh, yeah.
Don't forget him.
I want them to bring back low energy
Casey.
Scott.
Low energy
He'd be
Scott.
better than the girl, to be honest.
To me, there's Scott and then there's a fail. Epic fail.
I love when Scott came back to HQ and I was just watching the chat, like the feed, and everyone was just like, Daddy's home. Yay, Daddy. And I'm like, what a weird world
Well,
we
he's
live
the only
in.
one who doesn't panic when the fucking technology fucks up.
Yeah. And like, that's the thing is, it's not just a little, it's not like, okay, we've been stretching for 5 full minutes and now it's getting nuts. Like, you see it and it's like 0.3 seconds. If it doesn't come up, the other people panic. I think it happens all the time. And Scott's just talking.
And he's just like, hey, everybody out there, I'm looking at Jerry Jojo. I'm looking at Petey Peterson. You know, and in the meantime, he's like, where the fuck is the game?
Goddamn answer.
There was one guy that was just like, I'm just waiting on Q2 right now. I don't know where Q2 is yet. Q2 might come up. We'll see.
All right, easy, dude. Don't you fucking melt down on
That was
me.
my impression of
You're
him.
starting to grease your hair back.
I know.
It's one thing that you're shaving, but why are you greasing it
No, I'm
back?
not greasing it back. It's just my hair is naturally greasy, and then I just put it back with the headband.
That's
Yeah. And then he also then is wearing the the headphones, so that
other
someone is
people
going to
are,
like
yeah.
put that on.
I guess
and they're going to catch your grease.
Headphones.
No,
We
it's
should have
resting. It's resting on my headband.
Dude, you got fucking grease all over your fucking face and hair.
Now you're just rubbing it
Dripping.
in your
I mean,
back in
he's
your face.
dripping.
Grease is the word for producer.
He's got groove. He's got.
Your hair is naturally greasy because you don't fucking wash it, man.
Wash it
How many times?
like once a week.
Once a week is probably. Now look, that's okay for some types of hair, but I'm going to look at you and say that's not for your type of
I
hair.
should at least condition it every day, probably.
Dude,
No,
you should wash it
wash
3
it.
times a day.
You should, because I can tell you right now, once a week is not for your hair type.
You gotta wash that grease right out of your hair.
I'm not used to long hair either. It's just it's a lot.
Like if you told me
no
I have
reason it's
super,
grease.
if
Look
you
how
said I
bad
have
it is.
super dry,
You're as panicky as the people that you complain about on HQ.
Where's you too?
if you told me you had super dry scalp, dry hair, I would say, well, maybe twice a week. But you obviously don't, and you're doing once a week wash on the head.
All right, we're gonna fix that.
Up it.
Chris Stanley is going to give us his locks of the week, and unlike fucking Vito, Chris, I want your 4 picks, including your super pick lock.
Okay,
But I expect all these to be locks.
these are all locks, but then there's one that's more locky than others.
You mean your super pick lock?
my super pick lock?
Okay,
my super
good.
pick lock is what everyone's going to really want to
You're
put
Lockheed Martin.
even more money on.
This is like your
I
savage
like
question.
that.
You know, this is going to be, and I'm going to be using the spread, unlike Vito. All right, so it's Tennessee Titans at Kansas City Chiefs. It's Kansas City -9 against the Chiefs. Take the Chiefs at -9.
Wow.
They're going.
He took the Vikings straight up over here.
He's
Not
insane.
even knowing
Yeah.
that he was getting 9.
Take the Chiefs -9, and you're going to sleep easy on that. There's not even a look. Marcus Mariota's garbage.
I'm going to tell you right now, I haven't slept that well.
Well, this Saturday you are.
Me and the Titans are winning that one, dude.
There's no way the Titans beat the Chiefs.
We'll see. We'll see who's laughing. at
Atlanta
Yes, of
Falcons.
course we're going to see.
Atlanta Falcons at the LA Rams.
What's the line?
Rams are -6.5.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You can't have a half point.
You know what I say?
What's that?
What?
Yum, yum, give me some. Let me get them Falcons. Matt Ryan puts down Jared Goff. And
Matty Ice.
Matty Ice.
Yum, yum, give me some.
Yum, yum, give me some. Give me them
Yum, yum,
points.
yum.
+6.5. Take the Falcons. Those are your Saturday games.
Yeah, and am I already going to be rich by then?
I mean, you're going to have a lot of money by the time Sunday
Who
rolls
cares what happens
in.
Sunday?
And we haven't even got to the super pick lock.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. This is going to be fucked up. Buffalo Bills versus Jacksonville Jaguars.
Jaguars. What's a Jaguar?
Just let him go.
Jaguars.
He makes mistakes, but he knows his lock.
Yeah, I know my super pick lock.
There's our fucking building on
Oh,
TV.
God.
It says it's freezing here.
Good God. Bills at Jaguars. Jaguars are -9. Blake Bortles ain't going to score shit. Give me the Bills +9.
Wow.
Take the Bills +9. Jaguars will not cover.
Dragon wires?
The Dragon Wires will not cover.
Are the Bills going to win? I mean, are the Bills going to win outright?
The Bills aren't going to win outright, but the Jaguars are not going to fucking cover.
But Jags are going to move on, huh?
But Jags will move on and then we'll lose in the next round.
Copied my pick.
No, I'm fucking betting it. Unlike just throwing out crazy picks and saying they're going to win. No, I'm saying bet the line.
Just don't listen to him, Chris. Just do your
Here comes the super pick lock.
super pick lock.
The super lock pick of the
Super
week.
the lock of the week.
The super lock pick of the week.
The Lockheed
Pick,
Martin.
Just saying lock.
The super lock of the week for your divisional playoff round.
Pig.
A wild
Put a
card,
pig
divisional
in
wild
it.
card round. The Carolina Panthers at the New Orleans Saints. Saints are getting -7. I say take the fucking Saints. Make all the money you possibly can because the Panthers are going to get fucked up this weekend.
How many points they going to lose by?
They're
20?
going to lose by 16 points.
Wow.
It's going to be ugly. Like it's going to be over quick. By the second half,
We'll be doing a bumps and beers.
You're right, it's
We're
bumps
gonna
and
feel
beers.
that fucking comfortable.
oh yeah, because look, once they're down big, Cam Newton ain't coming back from
You're
shit.
right
He's going
about
to be
that.
crying
He
on the
does get-
sideline.
He does crack under
He gets
pressure.
upset, man. He feels bad about himself.
He is what you call a red ass.
Remember when I coached basketball, that kid on my team? He was really good until we fell 4 points behind. And he would lay down. I had to pull him out of the game. And then we'd get back ahead and he'd go in. And, Mrs. Shaw, he'd be done. I suck. All right, we got to break here. Chris, I don't like to push you a lot, but tell people how they can see me in Connecticut.
Ron will be performing at the Ridgefield Playhouse in Ridgefield, Connecticut, February 9th at 8 p.m. Go to ridgefieldplayhouse.org for tickets. He'll be performing with Rich Voss and Jim Florentine. It's a night of headliners.
The name of the show is Rich Voss and Friends, and Jim and I are the friends. Friendly friends. Then I'm also at Caroline's.
That's happening Tuesday, January 30th, for Dan Perlman's headlining Caroline's Breakout Series. That's carolines.com for tickets. Tuesday, January 30th, 7:30 p.m.
We'll have to get Dan in because this is his show, but he gets to ask a veteran to present him, and I am that veteran.
That is so exciting. What an honor.
Veteran of foreign wars, I believe. Of fake wars. A little kid asked me the other day, what wars I was in. And I go, I wasn't in any wars. And they said, look, that's right in front of our place. And they go, oh, there weren't any wars when you were younger? And I go, oh, no, there were lots of them. I just didn't go to one. And they're like, you could do that? You could just not go? And I go, apparently. Because I didn't go. And we'll be right back. Ain't it?
He was laughed out of the Institute, but to be fair, he was very funny that day. Hashtag Bennington.
Show on a Friday. Coming up at 2 p.m. What do we have, Chris?
It's Don Rickles, A Life in Comedy. That's at 2 p.m. Featuring Craig Ferguson, Kevin Pollak, Jay Moore, Jim Norton, Artie Lang. So many names talking about Don Rickles, hosted by Ron Bennington.
Did you just say R.G. Lang?
Oh my God, Archie now?
Stanley was telling me that he has what he considers to be a brand new conspiracy theory.
This is a conspiracy theory I've heard no one talk about. And
how is it a conspiracy?
Because
so you're the
the
sole conspirator.
You're the Black Mirror.
The year was 2012, going into 2013. Mike Bloomberg gets into a heated argument with one of the top yellow taxi drivers. The guy who owns a bunch of yellow taxi
the medallion stuff.
The medallions, yes. He gets into a fight with him at a party.
But he wasn't a driver, right?
He wasn't a driver yet. He owns a bunch of medallions, so he owns like a fleet of yellow taxis here in New York City.
A fleet.
That's what they call them, Vito.
Interesting.
He gets in a fight, says, I'm going to destroy your whole fucking industry. That's verbatim. That's what he says. Because he's going out of office the coming year. My theory is Mike Bloomberg is a shadow investor to Uber, Lyft, and every other car share program out there. And that's just specifically to destroy the yellow cab industry.
Let me tell you something, Chris. I take Uber. I take Lyft.
Yeah.
I also take yellow cabs.
Yeah.
The yellow cabs are just as busy as they've ever been in New York. It is still as hard to find a cab as it's ever been. They haven't hurt this industry. And there's also not more traffic.
It has hurt the industry because the medallion prices have gone down. Before, in 2012, it was like $1 million. Now it's down to like $100,000 for a medallion.
That's that. But in terms of catching a cab, right? Mm-hmm. Same exact thing that you've ever dealt with. As a matter of fact, you pay more money now than you ever have. What used to be a $7 cab drive is $11 a lot of times now.
And in this theory, you think because of a one argument, he's made it his mission to try to stomp out yellow cabs by investing in these.
Yes.
That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Do you think he's invested in all of them or just one specifically?
I feel like he's spread it around. I mean, he's a billionaire. He's got the money.
Because if Chris would have looked into this, he had a plan. Bloomberg had a plan to come up with a second fleet of cabs against these cabs. As he's looking into this, Uber pops up, and he's like, oh, I don't even need to fucking do this.
So then did he invest into Juno or something and try to take them down too?
I don't think so.
I like this world where Bloomberg's just trying to take people down.
He's a mad dog.
I wish Bloomberg would get fucking mad at Joe's Pizza and come in with some real fucking Italian pizza.
That I would actually enjoy.
There's just, there's nothing that holds water about Chris's thing. I mean, Chris's thing of, oh, you know, is this bad for the cabinet? You know, they're always claiming that it is. Bloomberg didn't even need to be involved in this one way or another.
I'm convinced he has.
You haven't done anything. You've got to convince us.
Under the radar. He's put money into a lot of money into Uber.
Why wouldn't he just put it up on the radar? You have to fucking say if you buy 10% of a company, that becomes public knowledge.
I think he's using like shell corporations to put that money into these other Ubers.
He didn't need to do that. He could easily just buy into it. No one would say you have
was this about that fight at the party you had?
He doesn't want that. He doesn't want the New York Post.
He doesn't have a problem. Like you said, he has $55 billion. Every day is good. He just put a fucking giant swimming pool in his plane. So he can be swimming while he's above the earth.
That's not natural.
No. Flying isn't natural, nor is the pool.
He also likes putting his name on everything, and he probably would have put his name on one of those apps.
Yeah.
Bloomberg car service.
Bloomberg.
Bloom car.
Bloom beast.
Yeah. Carberg.
Good.
Anyone else have a conspiracy theory that's as dumb as Chris's?
I do. So,
back to one.
This Will Smith movie on Netflix came out called Bright.
Biggest seen movie in the history of Netflix.
And it
was?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it did crazy well, but critics hated it. Critics destroyed it. But a lot of the just regular people who watched it didn't have a problem with it. I watched it. It wasn't good. It wasn't great by any means, but it wasn't the garbage fire that all the critics say. I think critics
Bloomberg?
I think critics are afraid that if Netflix becomes a viable place for like top tier movies to come out, then some critics may become not as important, because if you can just go turn on Netflix and watch the top movies of the year, reviews don't matter as much because you're just like, oh, fuck it. $10 a month I'm paying anyway. Let me just check this out.
First of all, you were already correct. Critics don't matter the way they used to. Because most of the big critics weren't national critics. They were well respected in their town. So when you used to open a movie, you'd have to battle it out in Boston and Chicago, and you know what I mean? You'd have to go market by market. Yeah. Like, hey, does everybody there know about Jaws? They know it's a big shark, right? So now it just doesn't matter. And I go to these screenings, and most of the critics are bloggers or a newspaper critic with as much heat as a blogger.
But I think now these bloggers and everybody are just nervous that Netflix could just take them all out. Like, if Netflix does well, then sites like Rotten Tomatoes and stuff, you don't need them anymore.
Most of those guys in Rotten Tomatoes are not critics as much as they are movie cheerleaders. You know what I mean? They're just like awesome. They're just part of it. You know? So, the whole thing of a critic making or breaking a movie, 0% of that happens.
Another thing people believe is that Star Wars, the only reason it is getting really good reviews is because critics are afraid of Disney, because they're getting so powerful owning Fox now and having Disney, that if you take a shot at like their top property right now, that you can get disinvited from future screenings. And like you said, since critics aren't what they used to be, if you're like just a blogger who wants to go see movies and just go see the next Star Wars or the next Marvel movie, if you're on their blacklist, then you're fucked.
Yeah, I don't know whether you're fucked, but you won't get all the free stuff.
Yeah.
But you're not fucked.
You're not getting a swag bag, that's
right.
for sure.
I mean, if that's what it takes to buy you. And I've always worked in radio, and we were always like, hey, before you say that this album sucks, wait a month. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because Aerosmith has put out an album, And if we're going to do the tour and do the stuff,
Right.
we can't be on here saying it sucks. But most of the time, if it was up to you, you would say what sucks and what doesn't.
I like this just as you debunk conspiracy theories. Like, here's why that's not plausible.
Yeah, I mean, most of it is just already out there. It's just...
I'll give you
a good conspiracy, you have to be underground. And both of these guys gave us overground stories.
I'll give you one that I don't necessarily believe, but I would like to get your take on it.
Yeah.
I read this once that it was, you remember the infamous wardrobe malfunction of the Super Bowl,
Yes.
where the titty came out, or the nipple came out, whatever.
Yes.
So I had read somebody's theory once that it was the CIA who orchestrated this in order to get the FCC to put a longer delay on live television. And the reasoning for that was so that they could modify news in real time. Or like pull things if news was breaking a story, then they would have the ability to do that.
Well, here's the weird thing now. There is so much news that very little news could hurt you. You know what I mean? The way it's presented and consumed, it goes away fast.
Yeah, that is true. And that's not just like the fake news thing, but it's just like the quantity of it and the fact that there's too many opinions with news. So most people hear news now and you assume that there is a slant where I don't think people used to do that. Right now I'm watching The Crown. I'm binge watching The Crown. Yeah. And the way that the media is covering stories that have to do with the royal family, you know, this is like just post World War II, and it's just like, we can't let this happen. The newspaper is going to get a hold of that kind of thing. And I feel like now we're like, well, we'll just deny that shit. You know what I mean? I feel like there's not the power the media used to have when it comes to scandal and stuff like that.
When there becomes more media, it is less powerful. You know what I mean? Like, if you look at the way people consume things now, they're from a million little places. But why isn't the Puerto Rico story the biggest story in the world?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, particularly over the holiday season when that tends to make people think more charitably. Yeah. And I'm thinking, you know, we still have people living without power, without access to fresh water, that like living in rubble still, and it's not really discussed.
You know, if you really look at if there's any genius to what Trump does, is that he will tweet something that maybe takes away from the story. So he might tweet something that we'll call him an idiot for, but in the meantime, we're not following another story. But you can see it's up to him when he decides kneeling is a big deal. Because no one else seems to give a shit unless he does. Yeah. And then they all fight over it.
Absolutely. And I think that happens constantly. I think sometimes he tweets something, puts his foot in his mouth, and rather than ever apologize for that, the strategy then is to make a shit fuck stack until you cannot find the last insanity. And think about how many times we've done that in the last year.
Constantly.
How many times did he tweet something that we were all talking about that day, and then he tweeted something later that evening that shocked us more, or we thought was so dumb or funny. I mean, sometimes it isn't even appalling. Sometimes it's just like, oh my God, he's crazy. Yeah. I'm like, those are the worst ones. The ones that you're kind of like laughing it off when he's just like, sad. And then you're like, oh, Trump, you're an idiot. You know, you think something like that, but he's buried something that happened that was incredibly offensive from the day before.
And there's a genius of that. It's like a guy that stole the diamond ring but farts in a bag and puts it over someone's head. And that's all people talk about later. You're like, that dude's nuts. He farted in a bag and put it right over somebody's head. Jen, you got a conspiracy story for us?
I mean, it's not an original one. It's just one that I've always heard, and I believed it. And then, you know, when Jay-Z finally talked about it and said he's not a part of the Illuminati, I guess I have to believe it. But I always thought him, Beyonce, Alicia Keys, Swiss Beats, I thought a bunch of them were in an Illuminati together.
There is some kind of a loose connection business-wise with all those people, though.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure why specifically it came to that. Like, I don't know why that was decidedly, okay, let's say that they're all in the Illuminati. I don't know why they picked that specifically, but like, I think that we all agree that there are things that work and happen that are under the table, that people do things all the time.
They're good for the people in it together.
Exactly.
Well, Coachella was always the outside rock thing, right? Vito, you're the one who told me this. Say who the headliners are at Coachella this year.
Friday is The Weeknd, Saturday is Beyonce, and Sunday is Eminem.
Now, how is that Coachella?
Hip hop across the board, yeah. And
then the only
pop.
other big names in the festival are Migos and Cardi B. There's really like Tyler the Creator's there, but like he's not really a big name at all anymore.
Coachella.
Yeah, that's insane.
It's the weakest, and then like the Gov Ball lineup recently came out too, and that's also the same thing. Like Eminem's headlining it, and then there's not much going on. These festivals are like putting all their money into like one performer now. Like all their money goes into like Beyonce.
Wait, am I wrong to say the Governor's Ball in the past was always kind of like a little bit more independent, a little bit more?
Yeah,
didn't they
it
have
was
a
like
little
more like
mix?
independent, like rock.
Yeah,
but not like
rock is off the table now completely.
Now it's just like pop hip hop.
But I also think because there's more festivals popping up everywhere, like now you have a festival called the Meadows in New York, where that gets like the mid-level names that would have been in a festival now get to headline this smaller festival.
Yeah, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like you've established something. Everyone knows the name of this festival. Yeah. They don't know the name of the Meadows yet. You know what I mean? Like that's not necessarily a step up.
No, it's
for
not,
somebody like you would probably rather be a mid-level band in a big lineup that was like a well-known festival rather than headline a festival nobody knows about yet.
Yeah, and there's just the amount of these things that are fucking popping up are crazy. In like smaller cities, you'll see like a mid-sized one with like one huge performer.
But you're saying it's a mid-level band struggling with pop stardom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Who wants to jump into the next topic? I'm already dead from this one.
Okay, so I would say what is something that people your age are nostalgic for?
Civil War, in my case. Everyone always goes back to that, you know? Nostalgia is so fucking gigantic. Like the 90s nostalgia now.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's almost unbearable because it's forced in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is so much a part of, I feel like, entertainment, communication, media.
They're bringing back all the TV shows. They didn't used to do that.
It's really
Mad
weird.
About You's coming back soon.
That, I mean,
was anyone asking for that?
Nobody needs Mad About You back, and that's not to say Mad About You was a very big show when it was on the air.
You know why it was big? It was stuck in between Cosby and Seinfeld.
Right.
I could have had a fucking show with me blowing a fucking whistle, and I would have won the time slot.
Yeah, I think that that is not one that
no one ever says. Remember that episode of Mad About You?
No. I can't really recall.
It was really weird when it came out because like 2 days before this, NBC was like, we might bring back The Office. And then a few days later, they were like, we're also going to bring back Mad About You.
Stop bringing things back. Start making new stuff.
Full House, I think it's in Fuller House now. I think it's in its third season on Netflix.
Has anybody watched it?
I watched the first season.
I watched the first season just as a laugh.
It's like, they're not trying at all on that show.
No.
They tried the original show, really.
Yeah, the original show, I didn't realize.
TGIF.
I didn't realize how bad Full House was until I went back and watched an episode, and like it was Michelle in a crib, and Joey was trying to find his car keys, and she kept saying hotter and warmer, and the audience was fucking dying at it.
They did go crazy. The audience loved that show.
Love that baby.
I saw the other night, David Duchovny was on one of the late nights, and he was saying that he had tried over and over to be one of the regulars on that show. Could you even picture that?
No, I cannot imagine that.
On Full House? I'm Steve? I'm gonna guess that's who he was trying to be?
All three top characters.
Oh.
All three guys. He
was trying to be like one of the main characters.
I thought he was going for the kid.
No, he would have been older then.
Jesus Christ.
And they're bringing back the X-Files. That's coming back.
That's already back. It's been back.
For a year.
What?
Yeah.
I thought it's just coming back
No, this
now.
is like season 2 of the new version. And they did a movie like 3 years ago.
I remember there was a short season like
You're
2
terrible
years
at
ago.
nostalgia talk.
You're terrible at TV talk.
He's nostalgia for a year ago. Let Vito do the TV talk, man. That isn't your thing.
TV boy.
Your books and stuff.
And weather.
So what I was going to say is, what is something that people are nostalgic about from your generation that you have zero connection to? Either because you passed it over, you weren't interested in it. If it was a show, you didn't watch it.
That's
and you
interesting.
hate when people are like, yeah, like, we're from this generation, we love this.
Yeah, I have friends who rewatched the old episodes of Full House, and I look at them like, this is terrible. Why do you like this?
Now,
Like,
is it because you
Family
knew
Matters,
you
too.
knew it was bad, or you never watched it as a kid, so therefore you're not nostalgic for it?
I never watched it as a kid.
Right. So now you're just watching it and you're like, this is a terrible show. What is it? Why?
Yeah.
What is the reason for this?
Makes no sense. These three men are living together.
That can make sense, you
God.
sexist.
Sounds homophobic. Yeah.
Well, like right now, the Super Nintendo Classic is like the biggest like toy this
Yeah.
season. Where like it's just playing games from Super Nintendo, and I was really excited when it was coming out, and then I played it for 5 minutes, and I was like, oh,
Yes.
yeah, this is
Yeah.
there's a lot better options out here now. Like I played Mario for 5 minutes, and I was like, oh man, like. There's not a lot going on here. It's the same. Every game's exactly the same too. They all like run on the same idea of like you're going to jump and you're going to jump on that guy.
See, I think what most people miss about nostalgia is I am not so much nostalgic for the music of my youth as I am for the way people felt and treated music when I was younger.
Right.
I miss that more than saying my bands were better than anyone else's.
Right.
You know, my bands were really, really good, and there's great bands in every era, but I miss the way the audience reacted. And I go see some of those bands now, and I see the way the audience is.
Right. And so, like, really you're missing, like, the passion of youth. Not, you know what I mean? Like,
I don't even see... Yes, I miss the passion of youth.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that. Because I was going to say I don't see young people feeling the same way, but I don't spend enough time with them
right.
to know that for a
To
fact.
know that they don't feel strongly about the band.
I know that they don't feel that strongly about rock and roll today.
Right.
You know, we could see by just what we were saying.
Right.
They love pop music and they love pop hip hop,
Yeah.
you know. But I do miss the way people felt about rock and roll. I miss the way people felt about movies too, like wanting to see good movies.
Right.
And they're much more accepting of bad movies.
But
now.
is there something that people of your generation say, I miss this, or don't you remember
Well, I'm
this?
going
And
to
you're
say
going,
most of the 80s movies. Like, I had fucking Ghostbusters on the other day, and it's really shot bad,
yeah.
and the dialogue is bad, and there's not a lot of sense there. I mean, it's fucking crazy, awful movie. And the CGI is awful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Bill Murray is Bill Murray. You can't get around that.
Right,
He's
of
always
course.
going to be funny. But
everything
he's
else,
not engaged in that movie.
like if you took Bill Murray out of that movie, you think it would be obvious that it's more of a mediocre film.
I'm going to say this, leave Bill Murray in it, and it's obvious. And he knows it too. That's why he doesn't go back doing them all the time.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So
that,
80s movies stink. And yet we're told that they're fantastic.
they're like, oh, do you miss?
Yeah. Top Gun.
The one for me is everyone who is my age talks about this show and are like, oh my God, remember this? And they have all these references from it. And that is Boy Meets World. And I never
love that.
watched that show. I don't know anything about that show. I don't know why people feel strongly about Topanga. I don't understand what the relationship, things that happened, references, Mr. Feeney or something.
Me and Liam met Mr. Feeney in the lobby here, and we were fucking freaking out
They
about
were like
it.
so excited that Mr. Feeney was
Dude,
here.
I was
and
here
I was like, what?
I was here one day when Topanga was here,
Yeah.
and every fucking guy in this place went crazy.
Yeah, they act nuts about it. Like, everyone's like, first boner ever. And you're like, yeah, first of all, don't tell me that. And second of all, like, I don't know. It's just like, maybe it's just like a thing that happened at the time, but I look at her, it's like, she's looked like a kid, like a nice chubby faced kid. I don't know. What was everyone going so nuts for?
I think she had some tits when they were just brand new for that whole generation.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
so they were like, she was developing.
Right.
When everyone else was like, ooh, a girl with boobs.
It was always like, in 5th grade, there was always some girl who's just bringing tits up, and everyone's just like, what the fuck?
I didn't realize she was so pretty.
Yeah. And nice.
Yeah.
So friendly.
I was big on the Boy Meets World thing. And then like there were episodes when they went to Disney World and stuff. Every TGIF show went to Disney World in the 90s.
Yeah,
It was on ABC. It was Disney.
I know, but it was really fucking exciting when they went to Disney World in those shows.
But you know why they went,
Yeah,
right?
it was a commercial, and they got me because I wanted the goofy hat.
I don't even know if they should have even been allowed to do that.
Yeah,
Like,
everyone
it
did
seems
that.
like that's the wrong kind of product placement.
Yeah, I remember Full House doing that.
Full House did it. I'm pretty sure Family Matters did. But Full House had like a 2-part episode where Steve got into the Indiana Jones show.
Guess what, dudes? They still do it today.
I know,
was watching
Manny's show.
Yeah.
Man.
Modern Family.
And
Yeah.
Blackish, they all, on the same night,
Yeah.
they all went to Disney World
Oh
on,
my
on the
God.
same Wednesday
Yeah,
night.
they still do that shit.
Yeah.
Man. And people are like, oh, this is a good one. They're at Disney.
I remember George Lopez show did it when that was on.
I'm like, the biggest thing was like, Manny's mom wants to wear her high heels, and they're like, you can't wear high heels to Disney World. We're going to be walking around. That's the big
And then they
plot
end up
point.
fucking going, hey, we found the perfect shoes for her right here. And they're affordable.
They have little Minnie Mouses on it.
And
This
there's
is
always
great.
stuff like, you know what? We were going to get divorced, but this trip to Disney World has really made our family better than ever. Hey, who's fucking Topanga right now? I noticed that when Topanga rides on top, her big titties short out a lot, don't you? They should just come back with just a show called Bouncing Topanga Titties. It's just her, just on a bed, just hopping for half
Oh
an
man,
hour.
I love the 90s. So nostalgic for the 90s right now. Jen, what about for you from just a couple years ago?
Why are you nostalgic from 2012?
I would say like more of a, when I was growing up, it'd be like a thing for girls to be like all natural, you know, and like barely any makeup. Now it's like you have to compete with like, you know, fake tits, fake butt, like lip injection. It's
Does
too
the
much.
fake butt even work though?
My friend has one. So,
Yeah?
yeah.
You
It's
think
like
it's good?
injections. So it's just like silicone just kind of like fills it up. But it looks real.
But why does it stay in the butt? Why wouldn't it just go around and suddenly
It's not in a
settle in the
bag?
knees?
It's not like in a bag or something?
No. They just like, you know, I guess inject it. And she said like you sit, at home for like 2 weeks, you know, you need rest. And then, and because you can't move around at all because then it'll, you know, sprout out.
Chris is spending money on fake nuts, and he says he feels a lot more confident.
You're
in his
getting
nuts.
nut injections?
They're more fuller and honestly a pure round. Just
Yeah.
like totally. It's not like, you know, like a.
Yeah.
It's not elongated. It's just a full
You
round
need a
ball.
different doctor because they're looking very dimpled to me.
Yeah, they are dimpled.
That's not good.
They're dimpled nuts. Well, it's time for us to take a break, kids. Coming up at 2:00, it is, of course, A Life in Comedy with Don Rickles. And a couple of things going on with me. Chris is going to tell you where I'm going to be appearing.
Ron will be a part of a night of headliners featuring Rich Voss and friends at Ridgefield Playhouse February 9th at 8 p.m. in Ridgefield, Connecticut. Go to ridgefieldplayhouse.org for tickets. It's Rich Voss, Jim Florentine, and Ron Bennington. And Ron will be part of Dan Perlman's headlining Caroline's Breakout Series. That's happening Tuesday, January 30th at Caroline's Comedy Club in New York City. Doors are at 7:30 p.m.
Both these plugs are a little wordy. I think we got to take a good look at them.
Yeah.
We got to tighten them up a little bit. All right, we'll be right back. You know, it's winter in New York City and probably where you live as well. Let's just all ride it out together. This is Bennington. Coming up in just a little bit, it's Don Rickles, A Life in Comedy. Who are some of the people in this, Chris?
Kevin Pollak, Adam Ferrara, Artie Lang, Bert Kreischer, Bob Newhart, Bob Saget, Bobby Slayton, Christina P., Craig Ferguson, Jay Moore, Jim Norton, John Stamos, Judd Apatow, Paul Feig, Lisa Lampanelli, Tom Papa, Ron White.
You know, you only mispronounced one name.
Which one?
Norton. You work with him.
He struggles with T's.
Norton. Jim Norton.
All right, so that's all coming up in just a little bit. Somebody was asking me about that car that was at the bank, and they saw it take off, and it looked like it was in some kind of everyone's looking at me like you didn't see this over the break.
What was that?
All right, it's up on the iBang. I'm not going to tell you. Don't read anything about it, Chris.
Okay.
Just put the video part up. But it has a real 1970s kind of Burt Reynolds thing. Just its driver whips out of a bank drive-through and thought he was 1975 Burt Reynolds. All right, so everyone just feast your eyes on this. Watch this black car and nothing else. Now apparently this guy was not happy with his transaction. He did not get what he thought he had coming to him. Or her. So keep an eye. Don't move it ahead, Chris. Just have the balls to wait. There he goes. He's flying out of there.
What the? Oh my God! What?
Was that amazing? Now that's the kind of stunt that it would be so hard to put into a movie. You'd have to work so hard at it. But basically he goes up an embankment, jumps over a car on the highway.
That was not what I was expecting to happen.
What were you expecting?
I thought he was going to peel out, swerve, hit the end of that car, do a little spin around. I had no idea he was going to hit that embankment and go entirely over the car. What was he doing?
I thought it was just going to be a turn situation. I did not see a leap.
Yeah. Don't even put on this part. This is nothing. But go back and watch this again.
Insane.
Look at the embankment and the timing of that car. And he actually goes across the top of that car.
Yeah.
And that dude is just sitting there like, what the fuck?
What just happened? What just happened to my car?
And no damage.
That was really nuts.
I'm wondering if we could see anything that lets us know what town this is. That's something
hospital. Yeah, I can't really read what it is. Everything else just looks like any town. There's a Hertz or something over to the left.
It's like Hilltop Hospital and a Meineke.
Dude, that looks crazy.
That was amazing.
Now, what impresses you more? That or Chris Stanley sending in the bare-ass video of Jen Selter?
I'm going with the jump over the car only because I've seen those tight pants. I've seen those yoga pants. I feel like I already knew what her butt looked like.
We didn't, though.
Yoga pants, more like hoagie pants. Am I right, guys? Here's what I would say about Jen Selter. Because she's a nice little Jewish girl from Long Island, right? Mm-hmm. And from my understand, she went from geek to chic. All thanks to that ass.
Did someone take off her glasses?
It seems like she had glasses on her ass. But, I don't think that she was known as the hot chick.
Right.
In school. She was just regular, nice Jewish girl.
I would like the idea of that being a geek to chic movie when they're like, you don't even know how big your ass is. She wears these baggy pants that cover her butt. She doesn't even understand how beautiful she is under there. That is a round ass.
It is unbelievable.
I mean, it is as round as they come.
That ass actually has a gravitational pull that is much more powerful than the equator. Now, yeah, because I don't think that, bounced out like that when she was a kid. But, yeah, those geek to chic movies are always my favorite because you will see incredibly pretty girls that they put glasses on.
Now, my most favorite geek to chic movie, which I actually think was kind of realistic, where they handled it pretty well, is in Clueless. because that's like the girls taking her over as a project.
Right.
You know, and they're just like, we're going to make you cool.
And she
then,
also wasn't beautiful.
Right, exactly. They're like, we're going to make you a cool girl. You're going to dress cool. You're going to talk cool. You're going to be one of us. And then like they create a monster and she just turns into an asshole.
Right.
Which is great.
And then later OD'd.
Guys, I never had straight friends before.
That was a pretty good impression, man. That was a pretty goddamn good impression.
And my buns, they don't feel nothing like steel.
Vito, you see every movie, especially once it gets to TV.
You're a TV boy.
You know, it was on TBS. Very funny. It was great. It was Miss Congeniality with Sandra Bullock, where she's an FBI agent.
Oh, God.
Where she's an FBI agent who's really fucking having a rough go at it. And she wears glasses. She's got the frizzy hair. She's a tomboy. They have a flashback to when she's a kid. She beats another boy up.
Right.
Nobody likes her ever.
But she's also stunningly pretty.
Right.
Not yet, until Michael Caine gets involved.
No. She's stunningly pretty.
No.
That's usually the funniest thing about them. It's like they're clearly attractive, but they just like have frizzy hair.
And everybody's like, "What? You're hot, Sandra Bullock?"
I'll give you a great one. It's from 1999, and I think it was either She's All That or You're All That.
She's all that.
She's all that.
She's fucking adorable.
Yeah.
Ridiculously.
Why would you ever think that she's just like, I think she wears like overalls.
Yes, overalls. But just gives you plenty of side tit.
Right.
But literally, if I knew her, I'd go like this. And when she got dressed up for prom, I'd be like, you don't have to put all that gunk on. You're fucking already hot.
Yeah. Look at her there. Like, how would you not think that was a hot girl at school?
Well, you see these glasses
nerdy.
that are right over her eyes.
Her hair doesn't look so brushed.
Then, not another teen movie made fun of that, I remember, and he's trying to pick a girl to pick out, and he's like, the one with the paint-covered overalls and the disgusting glasses? How am I supposed to make her look good?
They had to work hard just to come up for a reason. Chris, you got one.
I always liked Mean Girls as a geek to chic, because she was like the transfer student, Lindsay Lohan.
Right. They kind of take a clueless mixed with Heather's approach.
Yeah.
I feel to that movie.
Basically a cocktail dress.
Yeah.
Send her off to class.
She did have that pink polo in that one scene, though. That was too large for her. Wasn't flattering her body.
She was very geeky.
I remember at the beginning of it, they come up with some kind of, like, she's trying to bring up Africa.
Yeah,
and
she's
they just drop it.
Yeah, she's supposed to be from...
She's from there. She grew up there because her parents were, like, volunteer workers and stuff.
Yeah. And
then she moves here, and she's like, people are like, you're from Africa? You're white.
And like she, for some reason, she had to put everything in terms of high school in in the idea of like safari animals so she could understand them.
Let me tell you a real life geek to chic. And that's when I took this hayseed girl out of Florida and I brought her to New York City and no, but you've actually stayed a hayseed.
That's true. Geek to still geek.
I went from chic to chic. Wow. You know who I really do feel sorry for, though? On New Year's Eve, they showed Barron Trump, and he's with his mom and dad, and he's wearing a tuxedo, and they never have a friend for him.
No.
And he just looks like poor little rich boy.
He's lonely boy.
Oh, what a lonely boy.
Look, Chris knows that song. Of course he knows it.
Gail never knew the song, Lonely Boy.
I had no idea of this song, and he played it for me, and it's hilarious.
Jen, did you ever geek to chic movie that you liked?
Princess Diaries with Anne Hathaway.
Oh, yeah.
She goes from geek to princess.
Yeah.
She had to learn how to walk and talk like a real lady.
Also, hers is heavily featured frizzy hair. Yeah. For some reason, you got to tame that hair if you're going to be pretty.
Yeah.
You need to put some conditioner in there, get some product, and then people will find you attractive.
They have that scene that a lot of those geek to chic movies where they're trying to get the frizz out and then like the brush breaks and they're like, what are you going to do with
your hair's so weird.
Peter, you could make one of these movies tomorrow.
I know. I think that even though it's not a geek to chic movie, the Breakfast Club, that geek to chic transformation is so out of left field and unnecessary. Like, you know what? We need to do something with the Ali Sheedy character. I know. Let's put lipstick on her, put her hair back, and have the jock date her. It comes out of nowhere.
You know
out
you
of
are
nowhere.
right, because the whole point of that movie is, hey, we all are ourselves.
We get to be ourselves, but she has to change.
She is forced to change, and like she's like, really? Am I pretty? You're fucking Ali Sheedy.
Yeah.
And every other fucking movie, dudes are fighting over you.
I know.
Did you see that lost scene from Breakfast Club?
I didn't see it. I heard about it.
Yeah, I think see if it's up on the iBang. Chris, it should be.
It is.
All right, what's it under?
Watch the Molly Ringwald, Ali Sheedy Lost Breakfast Club scene.
Geez, that's pretty on the nose.
Literally.
Yeah. All right, this is 7 hours long, so they're in the bathroom together. You know how ladies do.
Sure.
Oh, this is so sad. You're washing your hands, but you'll eat food inches away from a live toilet. I'm sorry. I don't want to depress you. Really, I was just reacting to something I consider a little out of the ordinary. If you'd like to talk, I think I could probably handle it.
Wet potato chip.
This is not correct.
That fucking movie would have been so much better with that scene.
I mean, if that scene, I wouldn't even believe that she could ever go to Chic after that.
She's geek and stayed the fucking shittier geek.
And that's like the strangest transformation in that movie. Why did they do that? Why? First of all, where did she get those clothes? Like, how did she have like a little headband and like a little cute like top for her? Get out of those black clothing. Get that hair out of your face and date a jock. A guy who tapes someone's buns together would be perfect for you.
Wait, he's the guy who tapes someone's buns together? That was a friend of mine. Yeah, he's like me. He gets beat up by sporty guys like you. But I had to do it. You gotta win! You gotta win! I gotta fucking tell myself.
I had to tape his buns together.
And then he tried to shit and killed himself. There was another piece, I think it's up on the iBank too. This is a video of a character that was taken out of the Jim Carrey Charlie Kaufman movie.
Uh-huh.
And it's Naomi. She was Jim Carrey's girlfriend that he was dating when he met the
Right.
star of the movie. So you go back and watch this. They got like 10 minutes of deleted scenes and some kind of dude that fucking deals with, you know, film on a heavier level than Vito does. And you see it kind of changes the movie because he's really kind of cheating on another girl
Right.
when he's with her. I don't know how we got talking in about Geek to Chic, but I'll tell you who went Geek to Chic. And that's Don Rickles. All right?
That's true.
You will see him transform over this. Actually, it's really true that he was one of those guys that didn't make it until later in life.
Really?
Yeah, he was actually doing the bars and hotel bars and stuff like that way longer than it should have taken him before
And
he broke out.
then got late night attention, and that was the breakout for him?
Well, I think it was Sinatra first, Friars Club type stuff. And then once Carson liked him, forget about it.
CPO Sharkey.
Well, that was after he was already established, and that got canceled. Every TV show he did got canceled. He never had that success because there was enough people who went, he's rude and racist.
Right.
And now when you go back and watch it, you can see that he was rude and racist. We don't know how he would play today at all. You know, people bring that up all the time. They're like, what do you think Rickles would do with this audience? And I'm like, people would be mad at him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is weird. I mean, comedy, not even comedy changes, but sense of humor changes and evolves. That's strange.
Absolutely.
Because it is like social, it's cultural, things that we find funny for the same reason that slapstick is not popular the way it was. And then that's weird that it's also regional too. Like there are like types of humor in different countries. Like we find this kind of stuff funny. We've agreed as a society, this is the kind of stuff we find funny.
Maybe because it's all made up. You know what I mean? Like you're just saying. But I noticed this in the audience when people act like that they get judged by a stand-up audience. I think it's just the opposite. I think the audience worries about being judged. I think the audience worries about being seen laughing at a bullying joke.
Interesting,
or whatever, and they don't want to be seen that way because you can get in trouble for that.
Because think about this, you know how you always describe the thing, like sometimes with audiences, you'll hear somebody say something and you'll hear a gasp. You know that if those people were sitting at home watching a special, they wouldn't gasp. That's a reaction for the room. A gasp is a reaction for the room. It's not an honest thing.
Right.
They're not literally so stunned that the shock takes their breath away. That's just like, this is what we think is appropriate. And even if they heard the joke, they were uncomfortable with it, they would just sit there and not laugh if they were home.
Right. There was it kind of makes me wonder why people still like Seinfeld, because that show is kind of mean-spirited.
Yeah.
Towards outsiders and stuff, and it certainly lacks empathy.
Oh yeah,
show.
It's a very unempathetic show. I mean, they kind of point that out in their last episode. It was just like,
and then people hated that.
Yeah,
people hated
they
and
did.
reacted badly because it did say a lot about the audience at the time. Like you're laughing at bad shit. I always thought that David Letterman was a big turn in the way humor worked, because before that, let's say you would watch something like Lucy or The Three Stooges, and they would have like a mean boss who would be cruel to him. And then by the time Letterman came around, he had Larry Bud Melman, and he was cruel to Larry. But instead of people going, oh, can you imagine having a mean boss? We were suddenly on the mean boss's side.
Right.
And that changed everything. And that's when people started being like, in radio, like, hey, we're going to make the interns go downstairs and drink piss. You know what I mean? Like when I first started radio, it was like, we can't think of anything. We're going to chuck these things at the interns, see what happens when they get hit with stuff. The interns would be like, this is my way into the business. But people would never call up and go, hey, why are you being mean to the interns? They were always like, hey, it's fucking, it's really bad weather. You should make the interns go outside, have a dick slapping fight with each other.
Perfect.
Yeah.
This will definitely kill a break.
But what do you think, what was the changing factor that happened between Don Rickles, right? Mm-hmm. Where that was terribly funny to all of us, when I was younger, to now where we're saying that wouldn't fly. Was it the schools?
I think that it was schools and, the focus on bullying suddenly became not only being mean, but also making jokes and pointing things out. And I think that was taught in schools, but I think it really got intense after, the shooting in Colorado, the kids.
Really?
That I think that was really when the attention was like, these kids were bullied. And why did we not pay attention to kids who were bullied? Why did we teachers just go, oh, knock it off, or they just ignore it? And I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I do think that there's a before and after.
So you think that people actually had empathy for the school shooters?
I think that they were ashamed and hurt that other kids were that died because of it, and they thought, like, is there a way for us to prevent this kind of stuff? I think that had something to do with it.
You know, it's funny. I remember being a kid when it came to bullying, and like if you would have a coach who would say to the teams, "You guys better get him in line," and it was basically saying, you know, you're gonna have to be rough on this kid to bring him up.
Right, get him tough. Yeah, make sure he's not a weakling hanging behind.
It was like in Full Metal Jacket where they go and hit the kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like that was done not to bully him, but to toughen him up.
Like, I think I definitely grew up in a little bit, like, teachers were more conscientious of it compared to when you were young. Yeah. But I think that even a couple years after me, like the way my cousins were taught in school, much more of a conversation. I think, like, Golden Rule was always kind of taught when you were in school, but I don't think it had the bullying focus until I was, like, older. I think I was like kind of high school, college age when that started to become a conversation. So I think that did bleed a little bit over into humor, that people became sensitive to that. And then people are like, oh, does that also mean we can't laugh at jokes that make fun of people?
Well, I mean, they're not going to find that as funny. You got to remember that those kids that we're talking about have grown up. So they're the young people sitting in clubs now, but it is a very funny situation when comedy is about what unites us and what separates us. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it is, an audience is fine with a black comic saying to a white person, hey, you guys do this, blah, blah, blah. They're a little tenser if a white comic is saying that to a black guy.
Yeah. Well, like that's like that idea of, not like punching down, but it's like the power dynamic, right? So it's like if you think of the way black people are viewed and the way they were treated in society versus we're comfortable with them taking a shot at white people because we see that as...
But that's almost a racist thing to say. Like this black dude can have a sense of humor about himself because everyone that we know who's a comic does.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
So where are we getting this thing of like, oh, the black guys don't want to, I mean, there's a lot of times you're way more likely to see a black guy hanging out in a crowd full of white people than a white guy hanging out he fucking knows what he's dealing with. He's like, oh shit. But he's going to deal.
Right.
And it's the same way, like, if you point out somebody who's like in a wheelchair or something, they know they're in a fucking wheelchair. Why are you acting like, hey, why point that out? He's probably had 800 fucking people. All right, I'll tell you this. I couldn't fucking believe this happened. There was a guy on New Year's Eve. He's fucking hanging out. He's got a CNI dog with him. He's got a service dog. Now there's this fucking stupid open bar party going on, and these young people are drunk, and they're coming over to a blind guy. And they're going like this. Is it okay if I? And they're making the petting thing, right? Mm-hmm. Is it okay if I? Could he? And I'm like this. He's blind. He doesn't see you fucking miming.
Yeah.
They weren't even offended by this. And then I go like this, and I'm saying this in front of the dude, so I don't have to be a whisper guy. This is a fucking service dog.
Yeah.
This dog is trained to act a certain way. Not to roll around on the ground with you. Next thing you know, be pulling this motherfucker through traffic.
Yeah, this dog is at work. You're bothering this dog at work.
But I'm just saying, this is what a fucking blind dude has to fucking deal with every day. And then if you're going to be act like, hey, we got a blind dude here, everyone's like, please, don't pick him out of the crowd. The other night, when I brought up Pete Lee, there were Vietnamese people there, right? And after I got off, I go, when I said Pete Lee, were you guys like really excited? Oh shit, was that a big disappointment for you? And they're like, oh, how dare you? I was like this. Oh, you guys are from Vietnam? Probably met my older brother. Under a lot worse circumstances. I'm going to give you a geek to shake that I thought looked even worse. The movie Grease. I thought Olivia Newton-John was so much better as the non-slut than the tell me about it, stud. The fucking plastic whore you've turned her into.
When I saw, they did a play of that movie in like my elementary school, and after the play finished, they took us into the classroom and they said, does anybody know what was wrong with the end of that play?
Oh my God.
And we were like, what? And she was like, you shouldn't change yourself for anybody. So what Sandy did at the end of that play when she put on the outfit and act like a bad girl, nobody should ever do that for somebody else.
Just don't put on the play then.
But okay, never change yourself for anyone. If somebody comes in dressed as a bad girl, they make it a point to change her.
Yeah.
This is what I always say.
Then they Ali Sheedy her.
There's this weird thing that everybody wants their fucking kid to be an alpha.
Mm-hmm.
And they act like there's something wrong. The fucking crowd, the world needs all the different kinds of people.
Yes.
It needs a nerdy kid. It needs a shy kid. It needs a kid who fucks around. It's you guys who are trying to push everybody to be in Joe College.
Right.
Look at Chris Stanley.
Hey.
They made you feel bad about yourself.
They did.
Wait.
Yeah, definitely about the weight. I'm like, look, I just want to be me. You know, don't fat shame me.
What about the health aspect of it?
I have body dysmorphia, but in a positive way.
But you think you're fine?
Yeah, I am.
We need to take you from shit to fit.
You know what? What he has, all guys have. And that's like the dudism of thinking like, nah, I look okay.
I think that's great.
Looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Men like walk out, they take a quick glance in the mirror and they're like, looks perfect. Meanwhile, girls are like, I feel like my left eyebrow is like a little bit thicker than my right eyebrow, and it just looks so weird and I can never get it right.
Can I tell you that kind of narcissism is frightening to be around.
But it's also self-hatred. It's both.
That's still narcissism. You're still about you.
Yes, that's true. You are.
Know? There's fucking people in Puerto Rico who still don't have their lights turned on. And yet you're sitting around worried that there's too much space between your eyes.
My lips
when you
are
know
so
there's nothing
thin.
You can do. You have working lips. You should be happy as a motherfucker. Look at Vito, how upset he was that he shaved himself. You're not fucking growing that shit back on your face. You know why? You're pretty.
Mm-hmm. You're gonna be baby boy.
Did I go from geek to chic?
Yeah, I think you did.
Combed his hair.
You know what I think you went? I think you went from brawny to gay. I really believe that.
I'll keep it off. Buy some razors for the first time in a while.
Well, did you ever hear like when they say like when Brad Pitt was in school, he had acne so bad that he wasn't dating?
I didn't know that.
And all those fucking weirdos out in Missouri in the Ozarks could have been boning the shit out of Brad Pitt and they fucking blew it.
Couldn't they see the bone structure? I know he has bad skin, but the bone structure is there.
If I found out my kid was in school with Brad Pitt, even before he became a star, I'd go like this, you get pregnant by him. Because there's going to be some shit fucking happening in a big, big way with Brad Pitt. I'm wondering if Jen would ever trap somebody by getting pregnant.
I don't want to get pregnant.
But I know you want to be a billionaire.
But would you use a baby to get that money?
I've thought about
a billionaire.
Yeah, Mike Bloomberg.
I've thought about it, but I don't want to deal with the kid.
You know how old Mike Bloomberg is?
That's ridiculous.
Why? I'm sure his semen still works.
That's not what we're talking about. It would be like with Mike Bloomberg's son. Did you see that fucking Koch brother? One of the Koch brothers has a fucking goofy looking son.
I saw that guy. He's great.
Yeah. You know what he looks like? He looks like he stole Pee-wee's bike. He's like that rich kid. What was that kid's name?
I started with an A. I can't remember it.
A?
Here we go. This is the Koch brothers. They call this oafish Coke air.
That's mean. That's fucking bullying.
It's bullying. This guy deserves better.
Look at that fucker. He's worth billions. Now, you want to marry a billionaire, right?
That'd be nice.
Could you marry the oafish coca?
I like gingers. So
I had no idea about that.
She loves a ginger.
I love red hair.
You should be with my friend East Side Dave
Oh
McDonald.
my God.
He's as gingery as ginger could be. I feel like I know a lot of reds.
I can't think of any. What are the redheads?
A lot of fucking redheads have fucking hung out with us over the years.
Mike Lawrence.
Thank you very much.
He's a ginger. I thought brown.
What?
He
Yeah.
has red hair. By definition, we're talking
Even
about red
his
hair.
big fucking red beard.
Yeah.
I don't know how you put up with him, Vito. I really don't.
I don't know why I put up with him, Ron.
You can't just, that was just exactly what he said to me. And then you just said.
It's the same exact thing. You know, the thing is, he steals from me, too. All right, we got to throw it to break here, right?
Yes.
Why?
Because coming up next is Don Rickles, A Life in Comedy.
Do we need to do anything with that, or just throw it to commercial and
We'll throw
let
it to
it come out?
commercial, and we'll come back with it.
Enjoy Don Rickles, A Life in Comedy. Welcome to Don Rickles, A Life in Comedy. This is all part of the Happy Holidays Dummy, a celebration of the comedy and legacy of Don Rickles. Every day at 6 p.m. Eastern, from Christmas Day to New Year's Eve, you'll hear rare and exclusive content from the archives of the Don Rickles estate on Comedy Greats, including highlights from comedy specials and the Dean Martin roast. There are several generations of comedians that fell in love with Don Rickles, and we've got some of them on the show today. This is people talking about either watching Rickles or learning from Rickles or knowing Rickles. Adam Ferrara, Artie Lang, Bert Kreischer, Bob Newhart, Bob Saget, Bobby Slayton, Christina P., Craig Ferguson, Josh Robert Thompson, Dana Gould, Jay Moore, Jim Norton, John Stamos, Judd Apatow, Kevin Pollak, Lisa Lampanelli, Paul Feig, Ron White, Tom Papa, and Jeff Garlin. I, of course, and everybody from my generation were enormous fans of Don Rickles, and I always remember the day that he passed away because Doug Benson was on my show that day and told us this story.
I have been made fun of by Rickles on stage and off.
Wow.
I've been in the same space, same area where he is like 3 times. And, the first time was when I went to see him in Vegas with a bunch of friends. We were sitting up front, and you know how the table, you're like on the stage sometimes at those shows. Like I'm just sitting there, like right there. And I can't quote him precisely, but he asked me something and I laughed, and I'm pretty sure he said, "What are you, retarded?" and brought the house down. And then remember when he was on, Comic Relief, and he did the most craziest thing where his microphone wasn't working. So, a stagehand brought him another microphone, and this is live from the Universal Amphitheater, hands him a new microphone, and starts to walk away, or before the guy can walk away, Don Rickles takes the old broken microphone, tosses it off into the wings, and says, "Fetch." To the black man who brought him the new microphone. It was scary, horrifying. But then, after his set, I was standing around in the, backstage area where everyone's just milling around. And I went up to him and I shook his hand and I said, "You're amazing. You're my favorite," or whatever. And then he put his other hand on it and then wouldn't let go of my hand and started saying to everyone standing around in the backstage area at the show, "Hey, this guy says I'm amazing. I think I'm going to make it." And just really made a big deal out of it. I was like, oh my God.
I swear, the number of people who have these kind of stories, and they're all gold to me, all gold. If you were a certain age, you grew up watching the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, which is, it was a much different experience of watching it, the Tonight Show with Jay Leno or the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, because the Tonight Show was just so much bigger because it was really the only thing on at night. So you really looked forward to it, particularly if there was a great comedic guest. And I always remember checking the TV Guide. The TV Guide was a book that came out every week, kids. And if Rickles' name was on there, I was just amazingly excited. And it was so interesting as I grew older to hear how many people had kind of the same experience. This is Artie Lang talking about seeing Rickles on The Tonight Show.
When I was probably in like the 4th or 5th grade watching The Tonight Show, my parents, he would come on and, you know, I remember my father and mother laughing so hard they couldn't breathe. And then, you know, you didn't get half the stuff he was saying, but it just seemed funny because he just, you know, he said funny things and he said things funny to both, you know. And I, you know, from there on in, I just always thought of him as one of the funniest guys ever, CPO Sharkey. And, you know, it was just he seemed really cool, you know.
This is Paul Feig, the great director, writer, and producer, comedian himself, talking about The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and Catchin' Rickles.
It was always so exciting when he would come out. The minute you hear that music that the band would play for him, the Toreador song or whatever it is, we would get so excited because, especially growing up in like the 70s, you didn't, you know, television wasn't kind of filled with sort of a lot of people fighting and the Jerry Springers of the world and all that. And so you didn't get to hear a lot of like, you know, people putting down other people. And there suddenly was Don Rickles doing it in the funniest way possible. And it was like, okay, because that was his bit. So you knew he wasn't really insulting people because, you know, my father would go like, oh no, that's just what he does. And I used to love that. And, a friend of mine, loves his live albums. And there was one album in particular where, some woman laughed in the audience and his thing was like, you booze up old witch, what do you know? Which we always thought was the funniest line.
I forgot that he had a theme song on The Tonight Show, but it was bum, 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 bum. And basically it was like a bullfighter song, but you realize that Rickles wasn't the bullfighter. He was the bull. So when he came out of the wings, everybody was going crazy because it was like the monster had come out of the woods. You had no idea who he was going to get. This is the queen of mean, Lisa Lampanelli, talking about Don Rickles on The Tonight Show.
The only TV appearance where I consistently thought of Rickles were the Tonight Shows, and I'll tell you why. Because he took over. He did not let the host get a word in edgewise. He made fun of the audience and the band leader and the sidekick and anyone else, and even the host himself. And I would always say to myself, when I'm about to go on The Tonight Show, sit on that couch and make fun of everybody and run the show yourself. And that's where he came into that's where he affected my TV stuff for the most part.
That's Lisa Lampanelli talking about Don Rickles. And we're basically now into people, great comedians who, when they were young kids, watched The Tonight Show probably a little too closely. To me, one of the great comics who really understands comedy is Kevin Pollak, who could pretty much tell you about anybody in comedy. And I used to say that he was, you know, one of the most underrated actors ever. But I'm watching this TV show now, Mrs. Maisel, on Amazon Prime. And I'm starting to think Kevin Pollak is easily one of the best actors of his generation. This is Kevin Pollak talking about Don Rickles.
I definitely became aware of Rickles watching him on The Tonight Show with Carson. And anyone who made Carson laugh sitting next to him that hard, that uncontrollably, became an instant hero of mine. And also, I'd just never seen that style before. And I was talking with a friend recently from the stand-up world about how, you know, Rickles sort of improvised his act on stage. I don't think a lot of people realize that. After many years of doing it, of course, a lot of it became formulaic. But when his career started and his style of stand-up comedy started, there was really nobody else doing it. And what we were discussing was how no one since Rickles has been able to follow in those footsteps, which is unparalleled in terms of stand-up comedy.
Kevin Pollak talking about Don Rickles and that improvisational style that Don had, and why you don't see a lot of people doing it, because one of the reasons is it's really not a great career move. It's never a great career move to say to a club, I have an act. I'll make it up when I get there and it's going to be great. They never trust you. They certainly don't want you on TV. And a lot of people think, oh, Rickles, he was able to get away with this. But I don't think that he even got famous probably till well into his 40s and not really established till he was probably about 50 years old. It was a long haul for him to convince people that he could do this over and over again. John Stamos is a longtime friend of Don Rickles.
I would watch that great Reagan's inauguration where the Webster came up and Emmanuel Lewis said, and now Don Rickles. And then before Don grabbed the mic, Emmanuel Lewis said, be funny or something to that effect. And Don grabs and lets the audience laugh, grabs the mic, and then says, well, there's one black kid who'll never play basketball. And I go, Don, who wrote that? He goes, I just came up with it. And he would do those, if you watch that Reagan or any of those long things, nobody wrote any of that stuff. He just went. I think I'm pretty sure that he loaded up his Rolodex with people there and what they did and where they're from and how their careers were going, because he could riff on all that all the time, but never wrote anything.
Never wrote, but then there he was writing on stage. Again, it was one of the drawbacks to his career to become a movie star, because he wasn't following along with the script. I know when he did CPO Sharky, there was always kind of problems of, okay, this is really funny, but does it push the story along? And it happened time and time again. Artie Lang talks about working with Don Rickles on a movie.
The first scene I shot in the first big film I ever got in my life was with Don Rickles in my face, improvising jokes. I said to Norm McDonald, I said, Norm, I'm never going to get this. I'm going to laugh every time. You're going to have to fire me. Like, it was the first, because you're going to get fired, it's in that first week of a movie. Norm never didn't not laugh. Like in the movie, if you watch Dirty Work, he's laughing. Like he never got it right. After 20 takes, I got it right, because I don't know what he was going to say. We tried to write him insults, but you can't do that with him. He just said, look, just say what you want. Look at Norm and Artie and insult them. And the first thing he said to me is, he called me a baby gorilla. And the way he said it was just so fucking funny. And, that took 20 takes. Then he started talking to my belly like ice cream was in there dancing. That was funny. That took 20 takes. So, and then I had a bit of a relationship with him after that. The first Letterman I ever did, I told that story because I knew Letterman loved Rickles' story. And it killed. And I thanked him on the air. I said, you gave me my first Letterman, which was one story, the whole segment, 8 minutes, and it destroyed. I got invited right back, and Rickles called me at home and said he saw the spot and he thought it was a great spot. Stuff you let your mother hear. It's just like that doesn't always happen in show business. And he was just the greatest guy. It's one of those guys you wish lived forever.
Artie Lang talking about Don Rickles, and I just love that he keeps saying it took 20 takes, because there's probably 19 takes of great stuff that we will never see, which again, they're not crazy about in the movie business. They like to get the good stuff on the screen. This is all part of Don Rickles' A Life in Comedy, and Happy Holidays Dummy, a celebration of the comedy and legacy of Don Rickles. Now, every day at 6 p.m. Eastern, from Christmas Day to New Year's Eve, you'll hear rare and exclusive content from the archives of the Don Rickles estate on Comedy Greats, including highlights from comedy specials and the Dean Martin roast. A lot of times I'll end up talking to comedians about what would happen if Rickles was a new comedian now. Would he be able to work? Would the PC police come hammering down on him? And it's always interesting to see that all comedy is part of its life and times. It is always about one moment in time. He just seems too funny to me that he wouldn't be able to figure out how to do it in these days. But this is Christine P., an amazing comedian, talking about that very subject.
Don Rickles is special because, especially in today's politically correct climate, I don't think you could have that type of comedy. It was like perfect for its space and time, but nobody was weird about it. He could talk about the Jew or the lady with the big tits or the black guy, and nobody was offended. So it was special in that, because you knew he wasn't really a racist. It's called mock hostility, people. Fake anger. That's the fucking rules in comedy. And yeah, No one can do it like him. So fucking, you dummy. He's always calling people dummies, right? It's so funny. So mean. I love mean comics.
Craig Ferguson has a show, and he was talking to Josh Robert Thompson about Don Rickles.
Like a guy like that, I don't even know if that can happen now. Like, people are so twitchy and ready to get angry about things.
Yeah.
Like, cause he would say racist things to people of different, ethnicities, and they would go, ha, 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 ha.
When he would come on your show, though, it was very uncomfortable sometimes to hear the audience.
The audience wouldn't know how to deal with it.
He'd start picking people in the audience.
Yeah.
Look at this guy over here, the black guy.
Yeah.
What's he doing here? You got nothing to do.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, all right, we're going to go to
And I would
commercial.
tell him, you can't do that. And he's like, oh, he knows I'm not. And he didn't mean anything by it. You know?
And the guy knew. The guy didn't.
Sure.
Because it's Rickles, though.
It's Rickles. And I think that's it. I think he had the hall pass to talk like that.
Sometimes I wonder if the hall pass comes from the fact that you just know that he was a really good man. And I never thought that he was racist as much as he was making fun of racism, making fun of the differences between us all and seeing the similarities in that. Also, a very good friend of Don Rickles in his later years. This is Bob Saget.
Don was like a dad to me. I got very close to him. I had known him. I'd put him in the movie Dirty Work that I directed, the Norm Macdonald, Artie Lang movie. And Don was one of the most special people that I'll ever know. And he wanted to make people laugh, and he would be mean, but it wasn't like the meanness that we see in people that aren't equipped, they're like Jeff Ross is a friend of mine. He's a good-hearted man. So, but there are people that are in leadership that are making fun of people and making jokes that are just mean, and there's no humor and there's no love because they don't have any, because they don't. I guess most of the problem with all of these people is, I hate to say parenting. I always turn into the parent at the end of the day. It turns into a Full House episode. But I really think it has to do with who taught you how to behave, who not behave, who taught you how to treat people, and kindness. And that's where Don Rickles was one of those guys.
This is Kevin Pollak talking about Don Rickles and his style.
I think ultimately you have to like somebody who is that aggressive and abrasive. And in order to like them, they have to show some level of vulnerability themselves. And just to look at Rickles, whose, face was like a thumb, he got created instant vulnerability. Someone exceedingly good looking would not have gotten away with that act.
People always wondered how Rickles would have done today, but he hadn't gone off stage. He was still performing, and it didn't seem like there was a lot of change in his material. It didn't look like he bent to the new generation. And this is John Stamos talking about what it was like to be around a late in life Don Rickles.
You listen to old tapes, which I do all the time, or watch YouTube, and some of the stuff was hard. He didn't have a racist bone in his body, obviously, but some of that stuff. And he got away with it because, he was from that era, but it was starting to wear thin, I think, in certain areas, I know he said some stuff about Obama that didn't go over well. He didn't understand it because he was, again, never malicious or mean, but I think, he played it out as long as anyone could, but I think the era of that kind of humor is done. Look, we would go to dinners and there would be, like a young African-American waiter, and Don would start going to that well. And some of these younger kids, they didn't know who he was, and they didn't dig it. I sort of, a couple times had to go, in the kitchen and say, hey, he doesn't mean it. He's, this is what he does. And, but, on the other hand, 99% of the people would say, please make fun of me. It's an honor to be insulted by Don Rickles,
John Stamos talking about Don Rickles and actually making the point that maybe that kind of comedy is gone and gone forever. But, the same could be said for Chaplin and Bob Hope and whoever. Once again, it does seem like comedy is of a certain time and the people who belong to that time. This is Bert Kreischer looking back on the career of Don Rickles.
It was the funniest damn thing I've ever seen. I think I had gotten so wrapped up in political correct comedy and seeing so many people not say things that I just turned it on not knowing what to expect. he had a line where he sees an Asian guy in the front row, and he goes, "I was looking for your grandfather for 5 years in the fucking jungle." 5 years. And then he just turns his attention on this other guy, and he goes, "What are you, smelling your hand?" It was just, God, that Don Rickles special made me laugh hysterical. And then what I loved about him is that him and Bob Newhart were like best friends and always hung out and went to lunch together. Man, God, Don Rickles is hilarious.
It is something that always amazed people that Don Rickles, this insult comic, was best friends with Bob Newhart, who everybody saw as this great, sweet, funny man. And they were both together. Their families were close. They vacationed together. I had the opportunity to do Unmasked with Bob Newhart, my show, where I sit down with a comedian and just a room full of people. And if you ever get the opportunity, do it. If you could sit next to Bob Newhart and feel that strain his timing puts on an audience before they explode with laughter, it's just an amazing thing. But this is a question came up, is how did you become friends with Rickles? Because everybody was always interested in why Bob Newhart and Don Rickles were friends.
Someone came to me and they said, Don Rickles doesn't have a friend. Would you be his friend? And so I said, well, show me a picture of him. And they said, and I said, yeah, he needs a friend. No, actually, my wife and Barbara Rickles, Barbara Sklar, knew each other before Don and I met, and we got married in '63, and I think Barbara got married in '65. So this was like '67, and I'm in Vegas. I'm in the main room, and he's in the lounge. There is a pecking order.
Yeah, sure.
And so Jenny calls up Barbara and said, can we? Let's have a late dinner, because Don has between his second and third show in the lounge. And so we go there, and Jenny's sitting with Don, and I'm talking to Barbara, and now we're getting up. We could go in and see Don's third show in the Sahara Lounge. And Jenny said, "Gee, he's just the sweetest man. He just is. They just had Mindy. And he wants to be home. He hates being on the road, and he hates being away for 6-8 weeks at a time." And she said, "He's such a sweet man." I said, "Well, honey, his act may be a little different than that." So he came out, and the first thing he says is, he said, "The stammering idiot from Chicago is in the audience." With his hooker wife in Bayonne, New Jersey.
I could just listen to these kind of stories over and over and over. This is all part of Happy Holidays, dummy, a celebration of the comedy and legacy of Don Rickles every day at 6 p.m. Eastern from Christmas Day to New Year's Eve. You'll hear rare and exclusive content from the archives of the Don Rickles estate on Comedy Greats. It includes highlights from comedy specials and the Dean Martin roast. All of it is just fantastic. And it is amazing how many people have that war story of being made fun of by Don Rickles and just absolutely loving it. This is Jim Norton, who told me something I couldn't believe. Jim is playing Rickles in a movie.
I get a small part playing him in a film. It's just again on stage. It's the scene is not about me. Rickles just happened to be the comedian in that moment while other stuff is happening in the room. So I had to put weight on real fast. I tried to put on like 6 pounds in 10 days, 8 pounds. And now I can't lose it. I did tell you, I bought Hello Dummy. I bought this other thing, Don Rickles Speaks. And I was doing a whole bunch of, I had a script. It was one page. It was just a lot of Rickles dialogue while something else was happening. And then, I also learned a whole bunch I wrote down probably 2 pages of other lines he had done just in case. And then the director had me doing a bunch of Rickles lines, so I was really happy that I knew those extra lines because I was just kind of able, again, it was just to get a reaction from the audience, and they knew what I was doing, so they'd hear the same line twice. But I didn't care because I was playing a role with a script, so I didn't mind doing the same lines twice. But I didn't have to do the same lines 200 times because I had a whole bunch of other ones prepared. But I was just reading off a paper.
This is Kevin Pollak talking about working on a movie with Don Rickles.
Yeah, well, I got to know Don a bit when we worked together on the movie Casino, and he, we were the only Jew comics on set, so we would sort of cling to each other, and we went out to dinner and socialized away from the set. But watching Rickles go after De Niro on set in front of people was was definitely the most enjoyable part of the entire job. I mean, people can't believe that when I tell them, I'm standing on the set of The Usual Suspects when my agent calls and says, Martin Scorsese has offered you a part in his next film. It's set in Las Vegas. It's a period piece written by Nick Pileggi, the guy that wrote The Goodfellas. It stars De Niro and Joe Pesci and Sharon Stone. And, you hear all of that, but I swear to you, the best part of the entire experience was watching Rickles go after De Niro. Because when De Niro walks on set, this is 1994, every sphincter tightens. There he is. Shut up. No, you shut up. This is the guy. But Rickles was just not impressed because Rickles had confided in me prior to working, to backtrack for a moment. He confided in me that he had found out that De Niro worshipped him, that when De Niro was a kid in a peer group on the street corners, there were two types of groups. A doo-wop group stood around a circle, sang songs, or a put-down group, your mother this, your mother that. And to those kids, and believe it or not, De Niro was in the put-down group. And to those guys, Rickles was it. He was God. Rickles tells all of that to me and basically says, now watch this. So, I not only got to see him go after De Niro, I sort of had an inside track. So in the middle of a take, just the two of them in the scene on the casino floor, hundreds of extras, cameras rolling, Scorsese's watching, De Niro is acting brilliantly, and standing next to him, hunched over, is Rickles. And in the middle of the scene, while De Niro is speaking his lines, Rickles would just interrupt him. Is that the way you're going to do it? No, you got the awards. I'm sure you know what you're doing. Go ahead. And to the rest of us, it was like one of those, oh, shit moments, until De Niro started weeping like a 9-year-old on Christmas morning with laughter. He was so happy. And that was the takeaway best moment of the entire experience.
Well, now this is my favorite part of Casino, too. I just wish I could see it. And he had that reputation. Rickles had that reputation for taking down, the toughest guys of their time. Frank Sinatra, the only guy that could bust Frank Sinatra's balls. The President of the United States. It just, everybody looked forward to that. Here is Judd Apatow talking about his experiences getting his balls busted by Don Rickles.
The first time I saw Don Rickles was at the Westbury Music Fair. I think I was 11 or 12 years old. I noticed that there were a couple of seats empty in the front row, so me and my brother ran to the front row. And then, of course, 10 minutes into the show, he just tore us apart and tore apart our parents for not supervising us. And it truly was one of the great comedy moments of my childhood. Later on, I went to see him open up for Frank Sinatra, and I took mushrooms. And he brought my friend on stage to do the samurai bit while my friend was tripping. And we lost our minds. There was no one funnier than Don Rickles.
This is the very funny Dana Gould talking about Don Rickles.
I was lucky enough to meet Don Rickles twice in my life. The first time I met him, John Landis, who made the documentary Mr. Warmth, introduced us at a party. And John said, Don, this is a very good friend of mine who's also a comedian, Dana Gould. And Don said, what's your name? And I said, Dana Gould. And he went, I don't care. And then I laughed. And then he leaned over and he sort of touched my arm and he went, see, that's my thing. I make fun of people. You need a thing. You need like a hook. And I was, yeah, no, I know. I have a hook. But he was very sweet. And then the last time I saw him, He was my friend's wife, then fiance, was a producer on Late Night with David Letterman and did all of Don's spots, so they were very close. And they had an engagement party, and I was sitting with my friend Rob at the engagement party, and Don would only call Rob Bob. And during the toast, Don said, you know, Jill's a lovely woman. She's got a fiance over there, Bob. He could be with Jill, but he's sitting with some nobody in glasses. And I thought, oh man, Don Rickles roasted me. I can die now. This is awesome.
This is the pit bull of comedy, Bobby Slayton.
I was a young comedian playing a comedy club up in Lake Tahoe. I was at Caesars, and he was next door at Harrah's, and I went back to meet him and say hello, and I walked backstage, introduced myself, and, you know, being a little hyper, I remember the first thing Rickles said to me, what's your problem? Slow down, Bobby. Take a Valium. And it was an honor for me to be kind of insulted by Don Rickles. But the best thing is, you know, all the years I've been doing stand-up comedy, sometimes I'll make fun of the audience members a little, and I talk to them. Maybe it's more of a tough love program, and I'll pick on people. A lot of times, you know, I'll shy away from doing it if somebody really looks embarrassed, because people don't want to be the focus of the attention of the whole showroom. So about, oh my God, must have been about 15 years ago, I took my daughter to Vegas. I was doing a corporate one-nighter, and I had a night off, and I took her and her friend and her friend's mom. We all went to see Don Rickles at the Stardust. I was sitting in the back of the room. In the middle of the act, Rickles turns on the lights and he says, it's always great when celebrities come to the show. And this is after him talking about Don Rickles. This is after Don Rickles talking about Frank Sinatra for about 10 minutes. He goes, great. We're going from Frank Sinatra to Bobby Slayton. Bobby Slayton's in the back of the room. He's a stand-up comic. Bobby has a day job at the Olive Garden. He went on and on and on. And it was like my daughter's laughing, her friends laughing, and I'm going, God, I'm so embarrassed.
Bobby Slayton talking about getting roasted by Don Rickles. All these stories are just amazing. Here's Artie Lang.
A woman who did publicity for Dirty Work. She worked for MGM. She had a video camera, and I said, Don, could you look into the camera? My mother's name is Judy. Could you say hi to her? And he said, I've been working with your son all day, Judy, and good luck visiting him when he works construction. Like he just thought he thought I sucked. Well, he didn't really thought I sucked, but he told my mother I sucked. My mother believed him and started to cry. So it's Don Rickles. He's joking around. And everything he said was an insult. So I don't think he was a different guy off there, not to me, which was fine because he was hilarious.
Artie Lang talking about getting his balls busted by Don Rickles. This is Don Rickles, a life of comedy. It's all part of Happy Holidays, dummy, a celebration of the comedy and legacy of Don Rickles. Every day at 6 p.m. Eastern from Christmas Day to New Year's Eve, you'll hear rare and exclusive content from the archives of the Don Rickles estate on Comedy Greats, including highlights from comedy specials and the Dean Martin roast. People were always curious about how Don could insult people and get away with it. Why weren't people furious with him? And comedians love to talk about that.
For some reason, you knew his heart, and that was the signal in all the noise. You could insult somebody into the ground, but without being overt or really tipping your hand, you just knew his heart. You just knew he was a good, loving person. And that's something that we're all trying to figure out. Comics, engineers, graphic designers, that's what yogis and Brahmins and like monks are trying to figure out, how to transcend, where the person across from you knows the source is a source of love. You know, you get in an argument with your girlfriend and you want to say, no, hold on a minute, it's me. I'm not insulting you, it's me. And with Don Rickles, people somehow just knew he was a loving, beautiful person. And I think that's why he got away with it, because he obviously cared deeply for people. But it's so rewarding, and the audiences know, and they know, like with Don Rickles, he was a positive person, a loving person. So as vile as he could be, as much he could make fun of your wife when you're sitting in the front row, you knew he cared about you. And it was all right.
Jay Moore talking about Don Rickles, and this is Jim Norton.
Rickles was able to get away with all that stuff, I think, because first of all, he's one of the first guys to do it, and Sinatra co-signed for him. So once Sinatra goes, you gotta go have this guy make fun of you, no one could say anything. Because if Sinatra's getting fucking teased, who are we not to? So I think Sinatra is basically what gave him the right to fuck with everyone. Because once Frank signed on, if Frank allows it, you're a dick if you don't allow it.
It's a really good point. because Sinatra wasn't known to have people even disagree with him. And he absolutely loved Don Rickles. This is Kevin Pollak talking about this topic.
Rickles went after everyone. I think he became fearless when he knew he had gone after, the kings and queens of not only show business but of politics. He was the one called in by Sinatra to go after Reagan at the inauguration. I mean, this is the man's moment. It's his inauguration. Why would you? Well, because he's beloved and was the best at it and was instantly hilarious. And again, just a brilliant improviser. Watching him on the set, I've done improv on stage with Robin Williams. There was no one faster than Rickles. No one. He was a heat-seeking missile who hit the target every time.
Indeed, great praise there from Kevin Pollak. This is Don Rickles, A Life in Comedy. And I think what is always interesting to me is that young comedians that came behind Don always loved him. And that was even up to this time, the very end of his life. Young comedians were crazy about Don Rickles. And this is John Stamos talking about that.
Before he passed away, Larry turned Don onto YouTube, and he loved watching himself, on all those old shows. And he had a resurgence, and that's about when I started hanging out with him 20 years ago or something. He was just kind of a comic that was at Vegas once in a while. And then, the documentary, and he started to pop up around, and people started to realize, like, wow, this is the funniest man on earth. And he had the last 10 years, he had a really great resurgence, I think, where he got the respect that he deserved from, actors and, of course, comics and, presidents. And so he was really happy with that. The one thing I will tell you that he wished that he got before he died was a Kennedy Center honor, like a Mark Twain or one of the Kennedy Center honors. And we all tried to help him in that area. But that's you say, was he happy with his career? I think he was, except for that one thing. He would have liked that. So I hope someday we can get it for him posthumously, because Kimmel was helping us get into it. I mean, I think there was, when we were trying, I think there was something that came back that said that Joe Kennedy had put him on a list of never getting anything there, because I think he was doing hooker jokes about Joe Kennedy or something. So I think it went back a long time, but, hopefully we can make that happen someday.
That's a fascinating story, and I didn't even know that Rickles would want something like that. He always seemed like he was very happy on the outside, but I guess that thought of being validated was important to him. And obviously, when you think of people who've gotten that award, Rickles belongs on that list. This is Don Rickles, A Life in Comedy. And I had mentioned about how many younger comics were big fans of Don. And he had been showing up at some spots, like he showed up at Montreal just for laughs. And the younger comics just loved it. This is Tom Papa talking about getting that chance to work with Don Rickles.
I did, I skipped a family vacation to work with Don Rickles at the Montreal Festival. And I knew it was like my only chance to probably work with him. So I go up to Montreal, and we're going to do this big show. And they do these galas where they get a celebrity to host, and there's like 5 comedians on the show, and they do it for television. It's a big deal. I think it was like Andy Samberg or something had the show before. And this isn't to diss on him, but he was just, he's dressed in a t-shirt, and he's the host of the show, and everybody's just milling around in the hallways, and you don't know who's a comedian and who's just the catering guy. And his show's done. The next show is the Don Rickles show. These men walk in tuxedos and clear the halls. Rickles show, if you're not part of the Rickles production, get out of the hallway. People are scattering, like picking up their cheese boards and running away. And there's just, all of a sudden, there's a level of formality just took over. And they brought Rickles into his dressing room. Nobody's allowed there. There's a man that stands outside his door. It's like, okay, now it's showtime. They treated this show like it was the most important event in their life. And we all carried ourselves the same way. You're like, oh, this is a show. People are, Alonzo Bowden's like looking in the mirror all of a sudden, like, I got to get ready for the show. It was so great. And it was like, oh, this is something we really lost, that these shows are truly, truly special. We made it so casual that it doesn't mean much. And I was so excited to be a part of that.
I'm loving these stories one after another. This is Don Rickles, A Life in Comedy, and that was Tom Papa telling about just meeting Don Rickles and doing a show with him and having that being a totally different experience of everything else that he had done in show business. This is Adam Ferrara, a hilarious young comedian, talking about Don Rickles.
I worked with Rickles at Montreal Comedy Festival, the Saint Denis Theater. It was great.
Yeah.
I got a picture of me and Rickles, and I killed, and he hugged me. He hugged me at the end. He goes, "You're going to be a big star," and I'm going to have to say shit like, "Well, can we get him on the phone?" And everyone was around laughing.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh," and he whispered in my ear, he goes, "Remember what I told you?" He smacked me in the ass, and he walked away.
And this is the one and only Ron White talking about Don Rickles.
I met Don Rickles at the Montreal Comedy Festival a few years back, and he was doing an early gala, and I was doing the late gala, and a bunch of comics were back in this green room kind of area, and we didn't realize he was still there, and because he was in a back room, and he just came out. He was still in a wheelchair, and had a guy pushing him, and whenever he saw the comics get excited about seeing him, you know, he told the guy stop, and then he took time to insult all of us, and it was really, you know, like a proud moment in my life that I actually got, that Don actually stopped after probably doing a pretty long set and jacked with the comics and talked to us. There's really a couple kinds of comics. There's bridge builders, and then there's comics that walk across those bridges. And I think, Don was genuinely a builder. And, you know, that really taught us that you can get pretty cranky with these crowds. And I think that's progressed over the years. But back in the day, it was the cutting edge as comedy got. And thank God for the bridge builders. And thank God for, Don Rickles.
Ron White talking about Don Rickles on Don Rickles, A Life in Comedy. And I've got the feeling that we could have probably just extended this show and let it run like 4,000 hours and just let every comedian in the country give their opinion, and we'd hear stories that we had never heard before. This is all part of Happy Holidays, Dummy, a celebration of the comedy and legacy of Don Rickles every day at 6 p.m. Eastern from Christmas Day to New Year's Eve. You'll hear rare and exclusive content from the archives of the Don Rickles estate on Comedy Greats. It includes highlights from comedy specials and the Dean Martin roast. This is a very, very funny man, talking about Don. This is, Jeff Garland.
Don was actually a friend of mine. He was very kind to me. I met him while working on Toy Story 3, and I was told when I walked in there was a dinner celebrating Toy Story 3. Pixar does stuff like that. You know, they have their own private dinner, you know, celebrating something. And I was told Don Rickles wants you sitting next to him. And I'd not met Don up until that point. And I said, "Are you kidding me? Really?" And I sat next to him, and we sat and talked all night. He talked to me about how he puts together his shows, how I could do what I could do with my style, which, by the way, is more similar to Don Rickles' style than you know. I'm very present, and I will call people on their crap, but I don't attack per se, but there was a lot of crossover in things that he taught me. I also, my wife, is friends with his daughter, and so I spent a lot of time just being at different parties, different situations, always with Don. And whenever Don watched me do stand-up, I was always, I'm not going to say nervous is the right word, but I was always aware that someone was there that I wanted to, like, you know, I don't think about doing well when I do stand-up. And all I thought about when Don was in the room was, I got to do well. And the best feeling for me was when I came off stage for him to say to me how much he loved my show. Because imagine Don Rickles. Trust me, he ain't going to do that. And he would give me a kiss. I've been kissed by Don Rickles a lot of times. But I want to say that as a comedian, he was the most generous, thoughtful, wonderful guy who I learned a lot of. I know there's not a lot of sexy stories I'm telling about the one time he did this and one time I did that, or the time he and I went out with Sinatra. Well, obviously not that one. But if you use any of this, I just would be honored that you use me saying just what a great man he was. He really was giving to other comedians, and he was really giving to me.
That is Jeff Garlin talking about Don Rickles, and this is Don Rickles, A Life in Comedy. Let's go back to Lisa Lampanelli.
There probably were tons of insult comics before Rickles, but he was the one that stuck, you know? Like, were there women comics before Amy Schumer? Yes. But she's the one who happens to stick right now. So the fact is, there's always one you're going to go, oh my God, the original, or the one I tip my hat to. Hey, I don't know these other guys, Jackie Leonard, this one, that one, all those old school comics, Dick Capri, Freddie Roman. I bet a lot of them did insults and still do if they're still alive. And the fact is, Rickles was the one that made it an art form, made it into something that you can really sink your teeth into, and I think just had the general sense of warmth that we wanted to see him again and again. That's the problem. If an insult comic doesn't have any warmth, you don't want to see him, and you kind of take it personally what he's saying. This guy, you just knew he was kidding, so you let him get away with it.
This is Kevin Pollak talking about whether or not you would consider Don Rickles to be an insult comic.
Rickles, style has been called insult comedy, but that's only because people needed to give a name to something he had invented. No one actually stood up there and not only went after people in the audience, but went after famous people in the audience. And then that became a level of courage as a comedian that... when someone does it in the last 10 years, say Ricky Gervais at the Golden Globes, he gets a ration of shit for it, He's celebrated in certain circles for being hilarious, but without Don Rickles cutting that path, I don't think anyone has the courage to do that.
This is, once again, John Stamos talking about his friend, Don Rickles.
He hated when people tried to do his thing. I'll leave names out, but there was a few people that just made his blood boil because they were doing his act, and he felt without, the love and the depth that he had with it. He just didn't like being imitated, and you couldn't imitate him. I mean, he was one of a kind. Today they announced I'm having a baby, and the first thing I thought was, oh God, it's going to look like Rickles. Whether it's a boy or a girl, every baby looks like Don.
Truly a one and only. And it is very, very difficult to try to sum up a life in an hour, let alone a career in an hour, an art form that seems like perhaps it didn't exist before Don Rickles or existed in a much different form. This is Jay Moore talking about that very fact.
When I got into stand-up comedy at 16 and just started studying all comics that I could, he was the guy that really stood out because nobody did what he did. And there's that quote, Jerry Garcia's got this great quote, don't be the best at what you do, be the only one doing what you do. And he was and remains the only one that ever did what he was doing.
This is Don Rickles, A Life in Comedy. All part of Happy Holidays, dummy, a celebration of the comedy and legacy of Don Rickles. Every day at 6 p.m. Eastern, from Christmas to New Year's, you'll hear rare and exclusive content from the archives of the Don Rickles estate on Comedy Greats, including highlights from comedy specials and the Dean Martin Roast. I want to thank all the people that were part of this tonight: Adam Ferreira, Artie Lang, Bert Kreischer, Bob Newhart, Bob Saget, Bobby Slayton, Christina P., Craig Ferguson, Josh Robert Thompson, Dana Gould, Jay Moore, Jim Norton, who's going to be playing the part of Rickles in that new Marty Scorsese piece on Netflix called The Irishman, John Stamos, Judd Apatow, Kevin Pollak, Lisa Lampanelli, Paul Feig, Ron White, Tom Papa, and Jeff Garlin. It's Don Rickles, A Life in Comedy. Let's give Artie Lang the final word.
Funny people get away with a lot of stuff. Eddie Murphy always said that in a famous interview with Barbara Walters in like 86. Eddie Murphy said nothing's even racist to him if it's funny. If you're funny, you can get away with a lot of stuff because it's charming, you know? The most powerful guy in the room, to me, is never the richest guy, the best-looking guy, the most educated guy, smartest guy, talented guy. It's always the funniest guy. The funniest person is always the most powerful person in any room. And Rickles was funny. You tell Sinatra Mussolini died, half people laugh, half people don't, half people he wants to kill. And the funny people always get away with it. So that's what he was like.